Chapter 961. Be careful. Although Shui Yanyu was not used to Ling Han's smugness, she still reminded him, "You've also arrived. That lake water is full of corrosive power. If you're forced down the rock by the gravity, you'll lose half your life even if you don't die." Ling Han nodded. He'd seen the power of that lake water, and even he didn't dare to pat his chest and say that his physique on par with level 2 rare metal could withstand it. After all, he hadn't experienced it himself. "Can't people with wings fly over directly?" he asked curiously. Demonic beasts could take human form when they advanced into the immortal level, and could mate with humans to give birth to offspring. They were born half human and half demon, and had special abilities. For example, they had gills that could breathe underwater, or wings that could soar in the sky. In the immortal realm, they were called half-humans. If only it were that simple. Shui Yanyu shook her head. The higher you go, the stronger the gravity. Otherwise, you could enlarge your body and cross over with a single step. That was true. Ling Han nodded with a smile. For immortal level elites, it was not difficult to enlarge and shrink their body in a short time. If they could cross over with a single step, this island at the center of the lake would also lose its meaning. From this point, it's clear that someone deliberately set it up like this. He speculated. Did a Genesis tier great elite really set up something here? Perhaps. Shui Yanyu nodded. That was already something that had happened hundreds of millions of years ago. Who could live for so long now? They could have walked over from that era. Moreover, hundreds of millions of years ago was only the furthest history that could be traced back. Perhaps this mystery realm had already existed even further back in time. Forget it, no matter who set this up, I'll go take a look first, Ling Han said. Be careful. Shui Yanyu reminded again. Hu Feiyun was full of confidence, and said, Ling Han can definitely do it. Ling Han laughed loudly, and made a move to pinch Shui Yanyu's pretty face. He said, your tone is becoming more and more like my wife. Shui Yanyu hurriedly dodged, and spat, nothing good comes out of a filthy mouth. Ling Han strode forward, and walked towards a bridge in the lake. It's that kid. His appearance immediately attracted the attention of several people. Immediately, two young men walked over, crossed their arms over their chests, and stared coldly at Ling Han. Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and he also recognized them. Before entering the mystery realm, Shui Yanyu had already introduced them to him. Of these two people, one was called Yuan Shan, and the other was called Tang Hua. They were both students of the Northern Institution, but they were not from the Shattering Void Tier Division. Instead, they were from the Low Extreme Division, and their rankings were very high. They were ranked 480 and 522, respectively. Besides that, they had another identity, and that was by UNC subordinates, one of Zhao Luan's 3 followers. Simply put, they were Zhao Luan's lackeys. Junior brother Ling, this road is not easy to walk on. Every stepping stone is slippery. Coupled with the supergravity, you have to be careful not to fall into the lake. It can easily melt you, Tang Hua said. If I were you, I'd give up on the idea of moving forward, Yuan Shan said. Ling Han broke into a smile, and said, there's no need to use psychological tricks. I've already walked out, so I naturally don't plan to give up halfway. On the other hand, senior brothers, if you want to attack me on the way, such as pushing me down the stone steps. Let me remind you, senior brothers, be careful not to suffer the consequences of your own actions. Yuan Shan and Tang Hua both looked furious. This ant from a small world actually dared to threaten them. Do you think you can look down on everyone just because you've broken through to the mountain river tier? Tang Hua laughed coldly. You'll know in a while how laughable your thoughts are. The two of them said no more, and only stared at Ling Han. As long as Ling Han started to move forward, they would follow, and then push Ling Han down into the lake. Then, they would have an explanation afterward. The gravity on these stones was so strong, so it was normal that they couldn't stand steadily. Ling Han naturally knew what the two of them were thinking, and merely smirked coldly in his mind as he strode forward. Wang! When he stepped onto the first stone, he suddenly felt his body sink, and his hair and clothes all drooped down. This should have been soft and not subject to force, but now there was such an obvious change, which was enough to prove the strength of the gravity here. Ling Han only slightly activated his origin power, and his footsteps didn't even pause as he took another step forward. At this time, the gravity became slightly stronger, causing his bones to collide with each other, making clanking sounds. There were a total of 100 stepping stones, and the second one already had such power, so how astonishing would the end be? Plop! Another person fell into the water, and swam back with all his might. Naturally, it was another tragic sight. Fuck, the gravity here is so freakish, can anyone really pass through it? Someone shouted. Why not? For example, 10 years ago, Peng Yu of the Western Institution succeeded. Further back, senior brother Zhao Luan not only succeeded a few hundred years ago, but also obtained 2 stones in a row. What, 2 stones? Didn't they say that after obtaining 1 stone, the gravity here would double? That's right, so senior brother Zhao Luan's strength is practically unimaginable. Gasp! Senior brother Zhao Luan was freakishly strong in the first place, and after refining 2 mountain river stones with super gravity, how terrifying would his battle prowess be now? At the mention of Zhao Luan's mighty name, many people were speechless. This was a godlike man that people could only look up to, he was too lofty and unattainable. Hee, you guys know that senior brother Zhao's 3 great followers, Bai Yuanxi, Zhua Xiao, and Fan Yong, have also obtained a mountain river stone from this place in the past. What? Many people didn't know this secret, and they were all so shocked that their scalps went numb. Even his followers were freakishly strong. Otherwise, how would they have the right to follow senior brother Zhao? In the end, an elder concluded, it's not too difficult to obtain a mountain river stone here, and every time, there are always over a dozen people who can do it, but in the last 500 years, only 1 person has obtained 2 stones. Fuck! Many people clutched their heads. No wonder Zhao Luan was said to be the #1 prodigy in 1,000 years. With this comparison, it was clear that his strength indeed surpassed that of other prodigies by a large margin. Ling Han's heart was calm, but there was a surge of pride in him. If Zhao Luan could obtain 2 mountain river stones here, then he would obtain 3. He raised his foot, and steadily took a 3rd step. Yi Wenshan and Bai Yuanxi weren't in a hurry to make a move. They were waiting for Ling Han to walk further before making their move. Then, Ling Han's injuries would be even more severe after falling into the lake. In fact, he wouldn't even be able to swim to the shore before even his bones would melt. However, their expressions quickly changed. How was this guy running so fast? He had already run past over 30 stones. They exchanged a glance, and no longer hesitated. They hurriedly chased after him, and their speed was extremely fast. It was obvious that they wanted to directly knock Ling Han into the lake. Chapter 962. Since Yi Wenshan and Tang Hua were ranked 480 and 522 respectively in the low extreme division of the Northern Institution, they were naturally at the peak stage of the low extreme. Moreover, they were both 1-star geniuses, and their true battle prowess could rival those in the early stage of the medium extreme. They had already tried before, and their limit was the 80th step. Thus, before this, though they couldn't be said to be walking on flat ground, they still had some spare energy to do some small tricks. For example, knocking someone into the lake. Shio, they flew over. The stepping stone below wasn't small, and it was enough for 1 person to stand stably. However, it was a bit crowded for 2 people, and definitely not enough for 3 people. They were like a gust of wind, and Ling Han was getting closer and closer to them, causing them to smile coldly. Just wait for your bad luck. Get out of the way, they shouted at the same time, and after taking the final step, they both charged at Ling Han. Ling Han had naturally been waiting for them. He did not even turn around. His fists bulged, and he smashed them towards their faces at the same time. He didn't hold back, and with his full strength, the miniature mountain and river instantly materialized. Pooh! The people by the lake all spluttered in laughter when they saw this. They had seen all kinds of mountains and rivers, but this was the first time they had seen such a small one. As for Shui Yanyu, she couldn't imagine it. Ling Han was so powerful when he was in the Shattering Void tier, but how could he be so weak when he advanced into the Mountain River tier? The size of the mountain and river directly determined the level of power. You're courting death. Yuan Shan and Tang Hua both smiled viciously. He had just advanced into the Mountain River tier, and he actually dared to fight them head-on. He really didn't know how the word death was written. They even slightly restrained their power, lest they directly beat Ling Han to death. Beating a junior brother to death in front of so many people wasn't a joke. Peng, peng. Ling Han's fists shot over, and easily parried their arms. His fists weren't affected at all, and they directly attacked their faces. What? In this instant, how could they have the time to speak? However, the expression on their faces clearly explained everything. Shock, confusion, and fear. He was just a minor cultivator who had just entered the Mountain River tier, and the mountain river that he had formed was so small, so how could he possibly possess such terrifying power? Before this thought flashed through their minds, their faces had already been punched. It was as if they had been smashed by a divine weapon. The muscles on their faces rippled like waves. Then, teeth flew out of their mouths and shot out like cannonballs. Following that, their bodies also danced in the air. After drawing an arc in the sky, they fell into the lake with 2 splashes. Ah! They immediately screamed and swam towards the shore as if their lives depended on it. It was visible to the naked eye that the skin and flesh on their bodies were rapidly melting. Even if they circulated their origin power with all their might, it was useless. They could only slightly slow down the rate of melting, and the parts that should be melted were still melting. Everyone was dumbfounded. Who would have thought that this would be the result? Even though Yuan Shan and his disciple were ranked around 400 or 500 in the Northern Institution, one had to know how many people there were in the low extreme division of the Northern Institution. Every 20 years, about 500 people would be able to enter into the Northern Institution, and they would be able to enter into the low extreme division in 100 years at most. And if they could enter into the Scarlet Heaven Academy, could it be that they couldn't even break through to the Mountain River tier? In other words, these people could all advance into the low extreme division. But from here onward, it would be difficult to advance further. It was normal for them to advance into the medium extreme after tens of thousands of years. Of course, the Scarlet Heaven Academy only accepted prodigies. If they couldn't break through to the medium extreme in 10,000 years, they would be expelled from the academy. Then, even with a discount, everyone would only stay in the low extreme for 5,000 years, and the number of people in the low extreme division would still exceed 100,000. Among 100,000 people, they could be ranked in the top few hundred, and that was not awesome enough. If converted, that would be equivalent to the top dozen of the Shattering Void tier division. But Ling Han only threw 2 punches, and these 2 people were sent flying. This was too strong, wasn't it? More importantly, he had just advanced into the Mountain River tier. He was already so strong now, so how strong would he be in the future? It's said that the person from this small world has climbed 8 towers, and has the potential to become a 4-star genius. If he's a 4-star genius, he would have battle prowess equivalent to the early stage of the medium extreme once he advanced into the low extreme. No wonder he's so strong. But don't Tang Hua and his disciple also have battle prowess equivalent to the early stage of the medium extreme? Moreover, there are 2 of them. No, they have no idea that Ling Han is so strong. They underestimated him, and didn't use their full strength. Naturally, they can only suffer the consequences of their own actions. So that's how it is. Everyone nodded. Firstly, Ling Han was indeed very strong, and secondly, it was also because Tang Hua and his disciple had underestimated him. This made them breathe a sigh of relief. Although 4-star geniuses were very awesome, it was still within an acceptable range. However, there were also some people who appeared to be deep in thought. Ling Han had clearly only advanced into the immortal level after refining mountain river stones. If advancing from the early stage to the middle stage of the low extreme was compared to 100 steps, then he was at most standing on the first 10 steps. Then when he reached the 100th step, would his battle prowess be strong enough to reach the level of a 5-star genius? Not very likely, but it was possible. This was what was terrifying. 5-star genius, just the thought of it made people tremble. Ling Han turned around. To him, this was merely swatting away 2 flies, and his target was not these 2, nor was it Bai Yuanxi or Fan Yong, but rather Zhao Luan. He continued to advance, his footsteps still relatively relaxed. His power had already reached the early stage of the medium extreme, which was very advantageous. After all, it was useless no matter how strong one's battle prowess was here. In order to resist gravity, the best method was naturally still power. Because of the cultivation level restriction here, how many people could match Ling Han's power? Moreover, apart from power, Ling Han also had an even more terrifying physique. Under the pressure of gravity, others had to use origin power to protect their heart, brain, and other important organs. Otherwise, they would be forcefully crushed by the gravity. However, Ling Han didn't need this. His physique was on the level of level 2 godly metal, so how could this injure him? Thus, it was enough as long as his power could resist gravity. The 60th step, the 80th step, the 90th step. He walked very quickly, and only when he reached the 90th step did his speed finally slow down, revealing a strenuous expression. Indeed, only about 10 people could take away the mountain river stones on the island at a time, so it was definitely not an easy task. Sweat rolled down Ling Han's forehead. Chung, chung, chung. His godly bones were clanging, and his skin was also trembling slightly. This was because the gravity was too terrifying, and it wanted to tear his skin apart and snap his godly bones. However, Ling Han's footsteps were firm, and he continued to advance. "Fuck, this guy is freakish," someone exclaimed from the lakeside. Everyone nodded in agreement. This was the only word that could be used to describe this guy. Because there were a few places here that produced special mountain river stones, people were scattered. Although people had arrived here 3 days ago, no one had taken away a single mountain river stone. However, it was clear that this record was about to be rewritten. Chapter 964. Ling Han didn't care whether Shui Yanyu agreed or not, and directly took out a mountain river stone and extracted its essence. This was naturally not the special mountain river stone he had obtained just now, but from the group of 7 he had killed. There were 2 in total, and he hadn't refined them because he was in a hurry. When Ling Han refined the mountain river stone in front of everyone, the others almost became red-eyed, and wanted to snatch it. Fortunately, when they realized this was only an ordinary mountain river stone, they finally restrained themselves. Ordinary mountain river stones could only save cultivation time, and although they were very precious, prodigies didn't lack this bit of time. Only mountain river stones with special attributes were precious treasures that could truly increase battle prowess. Being wary of Ling Han's battle prowess was one thing, and the other was because of Hu Feiyun. She was the 9th king. Thinking of how much Empress Luan Xing doted on the 9th king, who dared to be rude to the 9th king. Putting aside the fact that the people of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire didn't dare to touch the 9th king, even the people of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire and Jade Drop Majestic Empire didn't dare to touch the 9th king. In fact, they even had to risk their lives to save the 9th king when she was in danger, because everyone knew that if the 9th king died here, Empress Luan Xing would definitely be furious, and wouldn't hesitate to kill everyone here to die with the 9th king. There was no doubt that Empress Luan Xing would do it. Shui Yanyu wasn't stupid. Normally, she couldn't see Hu Feiyun, and now that there was such a good opportunity, she naturally wanted to befriend her. That naive king was naive, and didn't know the dangers of the world. In just a few words, she chatted happily with Shui Yenyu. Ling Han was carefree, and cultivated right in front of everyone's eyes. In the eyes of others, this would be crazy and rash, but Ling Han was very at ease. That was because no one knew that his physique had already reached the level of level 2 godly metal, so who here would be able to wound him? Even if they used divine flames, it would probably take a few days to refine him, and even if it was extremely poisonous water, it would take a long time for the poison to take effect. After all, the special environment here meant that Ling Han was almost invulnerable. In his hand, the mountain river stone was gradually dimming, and his mountain was rapidly growing stronger. The lower one's cultivation level, the faster one would improve. When this mountain river stone became dull and lusterless, and turned into dust with a light grip, the first mountain and river in Ling Han's dantian had also increased in size by 100 times. Now, it finally looked a little like a mountain. I'm about to reach the middle stage of the low extreme, Ling Han said in his heart. However, this mountain and river was clearly about to completely take shape and condense into a river. Why was it still so small? Could it be that this was because he had relied on mountain river stones to advance? Forget it, I don't care anymore. As long as their battle prowess is the same, it's fine. Ling Han stood up and crossed the river again. This time, he rushed to the 60th step in one go, and only then did his speed slow down. After his cultivation advanced, his improvement was obvious. But when he reached the 90th step, he once again felt powerless. He forcefully took a step forward, but fell into the river with a plop. Ha ha ha. Some people immediately began to laugh loudly, wishing they could clap their hands. However, they were immediately astonished. Because Ling Han was actually waving his arms and swimming towards the island. Monster, definitely a monster. It wasn't that no one thought, since I've already walked half the distance, why not swim forward? It would be closer. Because this was more difficult, and more than 100 times more difficult. Swimming back was very simple. Aside from the corrosion of the lake water, there was no other resistance, but if one wanted to move forward, there was not only the threat of the lake water, but also a terrifying resistance. This was gravity changing direction, pushing from the direction of the island, and there was no place to exert force in the water, so it was naturally even more difficult to move forward. It could be said that if one swam forward, apart from being corroded by the lake water, it would be difficult to move forward. However, although Ling Han couldn't move forward, his body didn't rot either. This was too shocking. What kind of physique could resist the corrosion of the lake water? Ling Han swam for a while, and could only retreat helplessly. This time, it was easy, and he immediately swam to the shore. The clothes on his body had already turned into threads, falling off, but his skin was exuding divine light, and he was completely unharmed. Ling Han took out a piece of clothing and quickly put it on. He could resist the corrosive power of the lake water not only because of his powerful physique, but also because he had channeled the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, which made him invulnerable to all techniques. Mere corrosive water was nothing to him. Huh? Haven't you seen me before? Why are your eyes so strange? Ling Han asked with a smile. At this moment, Shui Yenyu and Hu Feiyun's eyes were almost round. How could they not be shocked? The corrosive power of the Crimson Lake was publicly acknowledged to be terrifying, and anyone who fell into it would lose a layer of skin. However, it was as if Ling Han had swum a lap in clear water. Even those old men from before were trembling, thinking that it was fortunate that they hadn't come into conflict with Ling Han just then. This guy's physique was so terrifying, who could wound him? Ling Han sat down again, and took out the last ordinary mountain river stone. After refining this stone, he should be able to reach the island. He didn't hesitate, and immediately began to refine this mountain river stone. After half a day, the mountain river stone in his hand turned into powder again. During this period of time, there were naturally many more people who arrived, and there were also some who left in despair. The physique that Ling Han displayed was too terrifying, causing the majority of people to lose hope. However, a prodigy from the Eternity Sky Nation came this time. He was at the peak stage of the low extreme, and he was also a 3-star genius. After expending a tremendous amount of effort, he also obtained a super-gravity mountain river stone. From this, it could be seen that battle prowess wasn't the most important thing to reach the island. There were many people more powerful than him, but at present, only he and Ling Han had succeeded. It could be seen that strength was the way to go. That person was called Yu Hao. Not only was he extremely powerful, but he also had 2 old men protecting him. Their battle prowess was incredible, and no one dared to act rashly. There had been over 20 such old monsters before, but almost all of them had left not long ago. There were only 7 left, and they didn't have absolute confidence that they could win. Naturally, they didn't dare to rashly fight. Yu Hao laughed loudly, and looked around, looking incredibly smug. Who didn't know that those who could reach the island were truly powerful? There were only about 10 people each time, and it wasn't something that those old monsters and secret techniques could accomplish. This was an extreme test of strength. The 2 old servants were overjoyed, and congratulated Yu Hao. "Congratulations, young master. Congratulations, young master." Yu Hao was extremely smug, but a strange expression soon appeared on his face. This was because there were people who were dumbfounded by this scene, but there were also many people who looked calm, as if they didn't notice his magnificent feat at all. Were they blind? How could he know that Ling Han had already succeeded once before? Although he didn't succeed the second time, it was even more astonishing than the first time he succeeded. Right at this moment, Ling Han stood up. He had finally reached the end of the middle stage of the low extreme, and was only a little bit away from forming a river. This was the boundary between the middle stage and the late stage. Yu Hao couldn't help but smirk coldly when he saw this. He had just successfully reached the island, and Ling Han wanted to follow suit. This was practically a joke. Overestimating his own abilities. Chapter 965. However, what surprised Yu Hao was that when Ling Han began to cross the river, many people actually looked at him with interest. What the hell? Yu Hao felt a strong sense of jealousy. He was the one who had successfully reached the island, so why was everyone paying more attention to this person? He hadn't even reached the late stage of the low extreme, because there were only mountains and no rivers. Could he be the descendant of some powerful figure? He was a narrow-minded person, and his expression darkened when he saw that his limelight had been stolen by someone who hadn't even reached the late stage of the mountain river tier. He secretly decided that as long as Ling Han returned, he would definitely teach him a good lesson. In any case, he wasn't a citizen of the empire, so what if he was the descendant of some powerful figure? It would be fine as long as he didn't kill him in public. Ling Han's cultivation level had improved greatly, so his speed was naturally faster this time. He flattened the ground along the way, and everyone almost spat their tongues out. One had to realize that this was Ling Han's second time reaching the island. He wasn't inferior to Zhao Luan. Moreover, when had Zhao Luan reached the peak stage of the low extreme after reaching the island twice in a row? In reality, no one was treated differently here. The gravity they had to endure every time they reached the island was the same. Thus, the higher one's cultivation level was, the more beneficial it would be. There was no such thing as being invincible among those of the same cultivation level. Ling Han clearly hadn't reached the late stage of the low extreme, which meant that he still had room for improvement. He could definitely reach the island a third time, or even a terrifying fourth time. Heavens! Ling Han arrived at the last 10 steps, and finally felt the pressure. However, his steps were still steady, and he strode forward. 98, 99, 100, he reached the island again. Everyone held their faces in their hands, and felt their scalps go numb. They were both reaching the island twice, but Ling Han was even more freakish than Zhao Luan. If news of this spread, the entire imperial capital would probably be alarmed. It could elevate Ling Han to the heavens, but it could also make him fall into a bottomless abyss. Ling Han grabbed a mountain river stone with one hand as he tossed out the blood-sucking origin gold, wanting to grab another. With his strength, he naturally could place the two at the same time. However, when his hand and the blood-sucking origin gold touched a mountain river stone at the same time, the blood-sucking origin gold suddenly bounced back, unable to wrap itself around the stone. Peng, Ling Han was sent flying again, and was sent flying to the shore. This kid actually succeeded. Yu Hao revealed a look of jealousy. He was originally unique, but now, there was someone who stood shoulder to shoulder with him, taking away his glory. He was narrow-minded and immediately walked over to Ling Han. He clapped his hands and said, "Congratulations, congratulations. You've also successfully reached the island after me. Hey, I heard that after someone successfully landed on the island, the difficulty would decrease by a lot for a short period of time. Hee, in that case, you're still basking in my glory." The thickness of this person's skin was astonishing. To puff oneself up by putting others down, they had personally witnessed Ling Han reach the island twice. What did it mean to reach the island the second time? At least in the past 1,000 years, only one person had done it, Zhao Luan. You've only come to the island once, yet you dare to say that Ling Han is basking in your glory? You're really making me laugh my head off. An expression of anger and embarrassment appeared on Yu Hao's face, and he coldly said, "What are you all laughing at? What's so funny?" Hee, young man, you still don't know, right? Before you, young friend Ling Han had already successfully reached the island, an elder said. Because they were all in the low extreme, he didn't dare to refer to himself as a senior even though he was older. This was the rule of the martial art world. Seniority was determined by one's strength. Pooh! Yu Hao spluttered, his expression extremely fascinating. He didn't believe it. How could this be possible? Did they think he didn't know that after succeeding once, the difficulty of reaching the island again was ridiculously high? It was practically an impossible mission. In the past 1,000 years, only Zhao Luan had managed to do it. One had to realize that Ling Han hadn't even reached the late stage of the low extreme. If all this was true, didn't that mean that it was possible for him to reach the island 3 times when he reached the peak stage of the low extreme? Nonsense. You're definitely spouting nonsense. He shook his head repeatedly. Hee. More people started to laugh, their laughter filled with mockery. In fact, if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they wouldn't have believed that Ling Han could be so powerful. After being laughed at by so many people, Yu Hao finally believed that he had made a fool of himself. His face involuntarily flushed red. He walked towards the island in the center of the lake, gritted his teeth, and also leaped out. He was going to challenge to reach the island a second time. He walked the first 10 steps with great difficulty, but after that, his body swayed with every step he took. Plop, he still fell into the lake. Instantly, he released a scream, and hurriedly swam back towards the shore. He failed. Because the place where he had failed was closer to the front, he very quickly swam back to the shore. His injuries weren't too serious, but this blow was too great. He was inferior to someone else. Ling Han was a whole 2 sub-minor levels lower than him, yet he had completed 2 attempts to reach the island. In this comparison, the difference in strength was obvious. Ling Han only smiled at him. Being able to ascend onto the island once was already an extremely difficult feat. He withdrew his gaze, and thought about how he could reach the island a 3rd time. With his current strength, he couldn't. He still had some strength left in his 2nd attempt, but he would only be able to cover 1/3 of the distance on his 3rd attempt. However, he still had 2 mountain river stones, and they both possessed special attributes. If he refined a super-gravity mountain river stone, would it have a resistance effect against the gravity here? Then I'll try refining another one. Ling Han retrieved an earth-yellow mountain river stone, and held it in his hand to refine. Many people were envious, but firstly, Ling Han's strength and physique had been slightly displayed, and secondly, there was also Hu Feiyan standing by his side. Thus, most people could only think about it in their hearts, and didn't dare to take action. "Young master, let's go," the two old servants said to Yu Hao. They had a special mountain river stone on them, and this would attract the greed of others. It was better to leave as soon as possible. Yu Hao looked at Ling Han, and after a long while, nodded, and said, "Okay." If he refined a mountain river stone here, it was very likely that he would directly break through to the medium extreme. The result would be that he would be targeted, and killed by the regulations here. It wasn't like no one had tried this before. Ling Han drew on the power of the mountain river stone, and in his dantian, a river was slowly forming from nothing. No wonder mountain river stones were so popular. They were more effective than any miraculous pill. Although the higher one's cultivation level, the more mountain river stones would be needed to advance. At most 10 mountain river stones should be enough to reach the peak stage of the low extreme. Fortunately, mountain river stones could only forcibly form mountains and rivers, and couldn't help with comprehension, so they couldn't help one advance by a minor level. Otherwise, it would be even more astonishing. Ling Han was astonished to discover that an earthen yellow veined pattern had appeared on the mountain that he had formed previously. At first, it was very shallow, but as the power from the mountain river stone continued to surge into it, this veined pattern also became deeper and deeper. This was a divine pattern. Chapter 966. What is an artifact? If a divine imprint was carved on a weapon, then as long as it was activated, the weapon would emit a special power and be known as a divine weapon. The materials used to forge god tools were not limited to godly metal. It was just that among the weapons that were forged, metal was the most common. Thus, most god tools were forged from godly metal. Now, a divine rune actually appeared on Ling Han's mountain river. This meant that his mountain river was, in a sense, a divine artifact. Gravity divine artifact. As long as he willed it, he would be able to activate the divine imprints, and from there, his attacks would be imbued with the effect of gravity, increasing his battle prowess. Half a day passed, and the mountain river stone in his hand once again shattered into dust. Late stage of the low extreme, about 1/3 of the way there. As expected, the higher one's cultivation level, the more mountain river stones one needs to advance. Moreover, the increase is extremely shocking. At the great perfection level, it would probably take more than 100 pieces to advance by a small realm. Let's try again. He issued a challenge to the 3 Ascents Island. Oh my god, he still wants to land on the island 3 times. When Ling Han stepped forward again, everyone felt dizzy. Hey, are you for real? Has anyone ever done it? No, absolutely not. Everyone shook their heads. Although there weren't many people who managed to reach the island twice, there would always be one in a few thousand years. In an era where geniuses appeared in large numbers, there might be 3 or 4 in 100 years. However, he had never heard of anyone reaching the island 3 times. Yes, one of them suddenly said decisively. Who is it? About 300,000 years ago, there was a genius. Su Ran. That's right, it's Su Ran. I heard that he had reached the island 3 times and created a miracle. It was also after that he truly rose to fame. But for some reason, he suddenly disappeared. Who's Su Ran? Most people had never heard of this name. Ling Han did not care about what others thought. He stepped on the first stone. This time, he wasn't in a hurry to advance. Instead, he activated the divine patterns of the mountain river stone to resist. When, his body also released a gravitational force. Naturally, the effect was completely incomparable to the effect of this place, but it was indeed able to offset it to a certain extent. As expected. Ling Han nodded internally. Zhao Luan had been able to reach the island twice, so he had most likely refined the mountain river stone he had obtained after reaching the island the first time. He had used gravity to resist gravity, and that was how he had been able to succeed. Of course, it was mainly because one's own strength was strong enough. This special gravity stone could only be the icing on the cake, and it was unable to provide timely assistance. Ling Han strode forward and began to advance. The first 30 steps were easy, but the next 30 steps were strenuous for him. After that, he staggered with every step he took. 80 steps he stopped. Sweat rolled down his forehead, and the godly bones all over his body were cracking. Heavens, he actually passed the 80th step. One has to realize that he's only just reached the late stage of the low extreme. 10 years later, he will definitely be able to reach the island 3 times. Everyone had different expressions on their faces. Many of them had ominous glints in their eyes. This was a super genius, and they could not allow him to grow. Ling Han did not try to be brave. Instead, he retreated. He took out the last mountain river stone and refined it. He was determined to excavate this island like it was a treasure trove. After refining this mountain river stone, Ling Han had also walked 2/3 of the way in the late stage of the low extreme. This speed could be considered terrifying. However, the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm only opened once every 10 years, and there were very few people who could obtain mountain river stones. It was impossible to distribute them. It was definitely rare for a person like him to obtain 5 mountain river stones. A second divine pattern appeared on the mountain in his dantian. The gravity effect has doubled, Ling Han thought. Ling Han thought to himself. Sure enough, the increase at the beginning was the greatest, directly doubling its power. However, when the third divine pattern was formed, its power had only increased by 50%. It should be possible this time, Shui Yanyu said to Ling Han with a nod. Her eyes were filled with anticipation. Reaching the island 3 times, this was a miracle. Will this man create a miracle? Ling Han can definitely do it. Hu Feiyun was filled with blind trust in Ling Han. Even that big evil beast had been killed by Ling Han, so what was this? Ling Han smiled, and said, of course, I'll definitely succeed this time. He tried again. It was really different from before. He now had 2 divine patterns of gravity, and after activating them, they greatly offset the supergravity of this place. Added with the fact that his cultivation level had increased by leaps and bounds, his strength had naturally also increased greatly. This allowed him to pass the first 80 steps almost effortlessly. After this point, his speed slowed down. He looked strained, but he still quickly reached the 90th step. From here onwards, it was the key, and the challenge. 91, 92, 93. Everyone stared at him. Was he going to make history this time? One had to know that Ling Han had not reached the peak stage of the low extreme, and there was still a considerable amount of room for improvement. If he succeeded this time, didn't that mean that he had a possibility of reaching the island 4 more times? Gasp, this was too frightening. 97, 98, 99, he was only 1 step away. A smile appeared on Ling Han's face, and he took another step forward. He had reached the island. Reaching the island 3 times all of a sudden, a menacing killing intent appeared on the faces of many people. The majority were from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire and Jade Drop Majestic Empire. This kind of prodigy was extremely likely to reach the heavenly body tier, and the presence or absence of an elite of this level would affect the strength of a majestic empire. Kill them, before he became strong enough. Ling Han was not greedy this time, and after taking a mountain river stone, he was sent flying back to the shore. He did not hesitate, and refined this mountain river stone again, pushing his cultivation level close to the peak stage. I only need 4 or 5 more mountain river stones, and I will be able to reach the peak stage of the low extreme. However, even so, it is impossible for me to break through to the medium extreme. After all, this is all due to external power, and I do not have the corresponding comprehension of cultivation level myself. After returning, I have to calm down and properly comprehend my cultivation level. However, the more mountain river stones, the better. Medium extreme, high extreme, and consummate level can all be used. It would be best if they have special attributes that can increase battle prowess. Although he knew that it was not very likely to succeed, Ling Han still tried to reach the island 4 times. The result was naturally a failure. This was too far away, and he had only walked a dozen steps. Come, if I want to reach the island 4 times, not only do I have to cultivate to the peak stage of the low extreme, but I also have to temper my cultivation level to an extremely stable level. There is only a mere 10 years' time. Will I have a chance to come back again? Ling Han felt that it was not very likely. It was extremely likely that he would settle down after leaving, and then attempt to break through to the medium extreme. This should not take 10 years. Then this time, I definitely have to fish up as much as I can. Chapter 968. You two really love each other, Hu Feiyun interrupted at an inopportune moment. Ah! Ahead, the last of the 3 was also eaten by the giant ape. This big guy obviously wasn't full, and its huge single eye looked at Ling Han and the others, revealing a menacing expression. Let's go. The 3 hurriedly broke into a run. Even though Hu Feiyun looked like she would only drag them down, her movement technique was shockingly fast, directly a body's length faster than Ling Han and Xue Yanyu. With a single step, she took the lead, and then led far ahead, looking like she was leaving them in the dust. Hurry up, the ugly monster is about to catch up. She even turned around to urge them, with an expression that asked why they were running so slowly. Boom! A beam of light shot out from the giant ape's single eye, filled with destructive power, shooting towards Ling Han and Xue Yanyu. Because the 2 of them were almost running side by side, and this beam was too thick, enough to hit both of them. Ling Han made a prompt decision, and his feet paused slightly. Then, he pressed a palm on Xue Yanyu's back, and a gentle but powerful force surged out, causing Xue Yanyu's figure to suddenly accelerate. But with this delay, he was instantly caught by the beam of light. Peng, with a loud sound, the ground shook, and soil shot up into the sky. With the beam of light as the center, the ground was collapsing, forming a huge crater. Ling Han! Xue Yanyu exclaimed, tears appearing in her eyes. How could she have thought that Ling Han would rather risk his own life in a time of danger to save her? Hu Feiyun also stopped, and comforted Xue Yanyu, don't worry, Ling Han will be fine. He even killed a big evil beast. If she knew the truth, she naturally wouldn't be so confident. Xiao, a figure shot out from the dust. Who else could it be but Ling Han? As he ran, he said, what are you 2 standing there for? Are you waiting to be eaten by that demonic ape? I heard that apes are very perverted, so be careful not to be captured and become the wife of a bandit, giving birth to a bunch of monkeys. Ling Han! Xue Yanyu instantly gritted her teeth in fury. To think that she had been moved, hurt, and enraged. In the end, not only was this guy perfectly fine, he was actually teasing her. Quick, run! Ling Han hurriedly called out. He had only hidden in the Black Tower just now, and hadn't killed the giant ape, yet they were still in the mood to chat. Peng, peng, peng. The giant ape also rushed out of the dust area. Its single eye swept around, and it couldn't help but reveal a strange expression. After being struck by its attack, this puny human was actually still alive and kicking. It paused for a moment, then chased after him. Ling Han and the other 2 continued to run, searching as they ran. There! Ling Han pointed to the left. There was a patch of rocks there that formed a complicated terrain. The demonic ape's body was so big that it could play hide-and-seek and shake it off. They hurriedly changed course and ran over. Xiao, Xiao, the giant ape's single eye lit up, and once again shot out a destructive beam of light. However, with Ling Han circling around, they all missed. Actually, Ling Han very much wanted Hu Feiyun to take a hit. Who knew, he might be able to summon Empress Yuan Xing, just like how he had killed the three-headed beast wolf previously. However, how many times he could use this was a big problem. If it didn't work, then Hu Feiyun would really be killed by him. Secondly, Empress Yuan Xing didn't kill him the last time, but that didn't mean that she would do the same the second time. The might of heaven was hard to fathom, and the will of heaven was hard to fathom. Thirdly, and most importantly, Hu Feiyun ran faster than a rabbit, so how could he let her take a hit? Thankfully, they managed to escape into the pile of rocks in time. True enough, the giant ape was greatly affected. Its body was too big, and it couldn't squeeze into the tight and narrow tunnel formed by the rocks, so it could only continuously attack. However, the rocks here were really sturdy, actually able to withstand this demonic ape's wild and chaotic attacks. Even so, the shockwaves of power still made Hu Feiyun and Shui Yanyu feel extremely uncomfortable, as if they were about to spit blood. Only Ling Han was unaffected. The attacks of the high extreme could only hurt him if they directly hit his body, so what did the shockwaves count for? He secretly guessed that as long as Hu Feiyun's life wasn't in danger, Empress Yuan Xing wouldn't appear. There. Hu Feiyun's battle instincts weren't strong, but she was good at escaping. She pointed ahead, and said, "There's a cave there." With the sturdiness of the rocks here, as long as they hid in the cave, the giant ape wouldn't be able to do anything. The giant ape's single eye swept over, and also realized their plan. Instantly, it unleashed its might repeatedly, its single eye shooting out beams of light. This had a great impact on Ling Han and the others, causing them to stagger and stumble unsteadily on their feet. Go! Ling Han grabbed Hu Feiyun, who had been sent flying back from the front, and threw her into the cave first. Then, he took a step to the left, and grabbed Shui Yanyu in his arms. The physique of the two women couldn't compare to his, and after being hit by the shockwaves of the beams of light, their movements were completely distorted. Boom! The giant ape had already grabbed over, wanting to capture Ling Han and Shui Yanyu together. Dream on! Ling Han humphed, and pressed his left hand, activating the divine patterns of gravity. Wang, the giant ape's large hand was instantly affected, and pressed down with a pang, but it missed Ling Han by about a meter or so. The strong wind that it kicked up caused his clothes to flutter lightly. Ling Han didn't have time to let go of Shui Yanyu, and rushed into the cave with her in his arms. Roar! The giant ape released an angry roar. Its strength was countless times stronger than these little insects, but it couldn't capture a single one on its way here, which made it explode with anger. It clawed at the entrance of the cave, wanting to forcefully dig out this cave, but its brute force was ineffective at this moment. This cave was extremely sturdy. It crouched down, and stretched out a thick and long finger, probing into the cave. Quick! Ling Han retreated, fully activating the divine patterns of gravity to influence the giant ape as he urged Hu Feiyun to run faster. There's a turn! Hu Feiyun exclaimed in surprise, and hurriedly turned. Ling Han also hurriedly retreated. He was still influencing the giant ape, or it would have caught up long ago. Pang! The giant ape didn't know that they had turned, and its finger continued forward, crashing into the stone wall at the end. Instantly, the giant ape roared in pain. The stones here were too hard. Only now did it realize that Ling Han and the others had turned, and hurriedly bent its finger to dig. Retreat a little more, Ling Han called out. We can't, we've reached the end. Hu Feiyun called out from behind. Her back was already pressed against the wall. Peng, Ling Han crashed into her, and then squeezed back with all his might. The giant ape's finger was still digging, and it was only 2 feet away from them. They could clearly feel its sharp claws. If they were directly touched, even with Ling Han's physique, he would be injured. The sharp claws of immortal-level demonic beasts were already comparable to godly metal of the same level, and they were also very precious materials. After all, there was only so much godly metal. It's crushing me. Hu Feiyun called out. Ling Han's back was completely pressed against her chest. This cave was really too narrow, and there was no way for two people to stand side by side. They could only stack on top of each other. Right now, Hu Feiyun was at the bottom, while Ling Han was in the middle. In front of him was Shui Yanyu, who was still in his arms. Only now did Shui Yanyu have the time to speak. She mumbled in a low voice, her voice filled with embarrassment. Ling Han was startled for a moment, and only then did he suddenly realize that he had placed his hand on her chest at the wrong place. It just so happened to be the towering peaks on her chest. Hu asked for that size to be grasped by his large hand, and he held it firmly. Chapter 969. Didn't notice. Ling Han hurriedly let go, but the cave was too narrow, and he couldn't shrink back, so he could only move down a bit, pressing on Hu Feiyun's lower abdomen. He couldn't move forward. Did he want to be caught by the giant ape? Shui Yanyu was so embarrassed that her ears were red, and her whole body was soft as if she was going to melt into spring water. Was this man fated to be her? Previously, she was almost naked by him, and he even bit her breast, and now he was holding and touching her for so long. He was practically more familiar with her size than she was, right? After all, she wouldn't deliberately touch herself, pervert. She could only scold. She couldn't let him take advantage of her for nothing, right? It's squeezing me to death. Hu Feiyun was still screaming. Ling Han kept squeezing back, and there was a wall behind her, making it difficult for her to breathe. Thankfully, this demonic ape doesn't seem to have a technique to shrink. Otherwise, if it came in, it would really be like catching a turtle in a jar, Ling Han said. Of course, if this demonic ape really shrunk and chased them in, he also had the Black Tower, but Hu Feiyun probably couldn't be taken in. Either she was eaten by the demonic ape, or Empress Yuan Xing would come out to save her. After digging for a while, the giant ape withdrew its finger, but before Ling Han and the others could breathe a sigh of relief, it started digging again, as if determined to take down Ling Han and the others. Isn't it just 3 bites less? Is there a need to be so persistent? Ling Han said, shaking his head. Foodie. Hu Feiyun scolded righteously. After a while, the giant ape stopped. Ling Han and the others didn't dare to be careless, or else the giant ape would suddenly start digging again, and they would be in trouble. However, this time, the giant ape seemed to have left, or deliberately wanted to numb the 3 of them, and actually didn't make a move again. In the cave, it was completely silent. Although it was very dark here, Ling Han and the others were all immortal level elites, and had no problem seeing in the dark. Ling Han was slightly embarrassed because the danger had been alleviated, and his mind was inevitably distracted. Leaning against his back was a beautiful body, and in his arms was an equally enchanting stunner. Unfortunately, Hu Feiyun was still unable to catch her breath, and kept twisting her body, causing Ling Han to suffer greatly. Don't test his will like this. Everything about Ling Han's body was normal. Moreover, Helian Xuanxue had been gone for more than 2 years, and he had always been chaste. Naturally, his heat was more exuberant. His self-control was very strong, but his body's reaction was another matter. At first, Shui Yanyu only felt uncomfortable, as if there was something hard pressing against her. However, no matter how inexperienced she was still a woman. There were many things that she could learn on her own, and didn't need to be taught. She came to her senses and was instantly embarrassed and annoyed. This pervert, this shameless scoundrel, actually has a crooked idea about me at this time. This was really wrong for Ling Han. He really didn't have any perverted thoughts in his mind. It was just that he had 2 beauties in his arms, and they were in the front and back. If he wasn't messed up, he was either a eunuch or a homosexual. He only had a slight reaction, and didn't make a move. Ling Han's self-control was really astonishing. Pervert, I'm going to kill you. Shui Yanyu said through gritted teeth. Big sister Shui, what did he do to you? Hu Feiyun asked curiously. How could Shui Yanyu have the nerve to say it? She only humphed, and said, "This guy is not a good person." Hu Feiyun felt strange. Ling Han was a good person. He had saved her before, and just now, he had also disregarded his own safety. Where else could she find such a good person? Yet Ling Han was annoyed. "I didn't do anything to you." Now, in this situation, he only had a little instinctive reaction. Who asked him to be a man? He moved closer to Shui Yenyu's ear, and said, "If you scold me again, be careful, or I won't be polite to you." "Damn pervert, you've done evil things, and you don't allow others to talk about it." Shui Yenyu was just about to scold him sternly, but unexpectedly, Ling Han bit her earlobe. Instantly, a numb feeling assaulted her whole body, causing her mind to go blank, and she completely lost her thoughts. Peng, the giant ape's claws reached in again, and a strong gust of wind surged, causing her to suddenly come to her senses. "Pervert!" She scolded again. "Yo, you've learned a bad new word." Ling Han laughed loudly. "Since you've already scolded me as a pervert and pervert, then I'll just give you the word pervert." He moved his large hand up, and once again gripped that plump mound. Shui Yenyu's whole body instantly stiffened, and her brain instantly stopped working. "Her reaction is still so strong," Ling Han murmured. She already knew the secret of him possessing a spatial god tool, so he only had two choices, either kill her, or become one of them, and ensure that the secret would not be leaked. He decided to choose the second option. The giant ape was still wreaking havoc, and Hu Feiyun was still completely confused. However, Ling Han and Shui Yenyu both felt as if they were on top of the clouds, and even the danger seemed to have disappeared. There was only that surging feeling circulating in their bodies. After who knew how long, the two of them did not notice that the giant ape had already stopped harassing them for a very, very long time. It was only when Hu Feiyun repeatedly shouted that she could not take it anymore that they were startled awake. Ling Han said, "I'll go out, the two of you stay here." He circulated his origin power, and his whole body crackled. His body changed shape, and he squeezed Shui Yenyu to the front, and carefully exited the cave. Shui Yenyu bit her lip. She did not need to look in the mirror to know that her pretty face must be astonishingly red, because she felt the waves of heat, as if she was about to burn up. She actually tolerated that guy's frivolity, and even enjoyed it a little. This was really too shameful. "Come out, that demonic ape has left." Ling Han's voice traveled over from outside. Hu Feiyun nudged Shui Yenyu, and only then did Shui Yenyu come back to her senses, and stride forward. After exiting the cave, she buried her head very low, and did not dare to look at Ling Han at all. What happened to big sister Shui? Hu Feiyun was confused. "Stayed too long in the cave, and twisted my neck." Ling Han made up a random story. However, Hu Feiyun did not doubt him, and hurriedly asked Shui Yenyu, "Big sister Shui, is it very serious?" Shui Yenyu raised her head, and glared fiercely at Ling Han. Then, she said to Hu Feiyun, "I'm fine." "That's great." Hu Feiyun clapped her hands. This ninth king was really kind. However, in the world of martial art, and in the whirlpool of power, her kindness would only bring disaster to herself. Fortunately, there was Empress Luan Xing to shelter her, so no one would dare to have any ideas about her. Let's continue forward. After determining the direction, they continued to walk towards the flame cave. After walking for 2 days, they stopped to rest. Hu Feiyun was spoiled, and could not bear hardship at all. Ling Han started a fire to cook. After entering the mystery realm, he did not have the time to refine spiritual meat. Otherwise, if he also cultivated the 9 dragons tyrant body art to the immortal level, his power could still increase by a level, and there was hope that his power could break through to the height of 5 stars. This did not improve the Thunderclap 9th Heaven and the 3 styles of Black Origin, because those were all activated with Origin power, but the power of the Ultimate Arrow could increase by a level, and there was hope that his battle prowess in a head-on battle would break through to the level of a 7-star genius. Chapter 970. After eating, they decided to rest for 6 hours and recover to their peak condition before taking action. Ling Han pulled Shui Yanyu to a corner in the forest. Ever since the incident in the cave, they had not spoken to each other. What exactly do you want? Shui Yanyu stared at Ling Han. What do you want? Ling Han asked with a smile. Don't play dumb. You have repeatedly taken advantage of me. Who do you think I am? She appeared to be very angry. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh and said, Do I think you are my wife? Shui Yenyu's pretty face flushed red. The word wife had hit her where it hurt, causing her aura to plummet. She raised her head and proudly said, Don't forget, we are only pretending to be lovers. Just kidding, I would never do such a stupid thing. Ling Han smiled and said, You are my wife, you can't go back on your word. Do you think I will yield? Shui Yenyu appeared very stubborn. Ling Han pressed his hand forward and pressed her against a large tree and said, What do you think? Shui Yenyu's pretty face couldn't help but flush red, and she said, You pervert, do you really have to get physical? Ling Han snickered and said, You are my wife, it is my responsibility to get physical with you. Shui Yenyu couldn't help but want to slap him. He was obviously taking advantage of her, and yet he said it so openly. However, she was no match for Ling Han's great strength, and was pressed against the tree trunk, unable to struggle free. Moreover, her whole body was heating up, and she seemed to be enjoying it a little. Girl, give me a smile. Ling Han pinched her chin, and raised her exquisite and alluring pretty face. Pervert. She murmured softly, but Ling Han captured her red lips, and kissed her words. Ling Han kissed her with his mouth, and his hands didn't mind either. He continued to attack her, and Shui Yenyu's delicate body completely fell into his control. It's really intoxicating. It's addictive, Ling Han whispered into Shui Yenyu's ear. Shui Yenyu's beautiful eyes were as enchanting as spring water. She rolled her eyes at Ling Han and said, You are the emperor of a small world, so you definitely have many wives and concubines. Which wife do I count as? Ling Han deliberately stretched out his hand and started counting one finger at a time. He didn't finish counting even after a long time. This made Shui Yenyu anxious. How many harems do you have? You actually haven't finished counting after so long. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, At present, there's only one. There's still one waiting to be married, and there's only you, who delivered yourself to my doorstep. Of course, he didn't include Li Si-chan, Lu Yutong, and Zhu Xian'er. Although he was not an expert in the field of love, he knew that it was better to have fewer confidants. Moreover, Shui Yenyu had only asked him how many wives he had, so his answer was not wrong. There was indeed only Helian Xuanxue. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden had not been found yet. Who delivered themselves to my doorstep? Shui Yenyu raised her hand and thumped his chest. He. Ling Han kissed her again. In terms of appearance alone, she was not the slightest bit inferior to Zhu Xian'er and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Furthermore, she was a natural stunner. Once one did not keep their guard up against her, they would be enchanted by her at any moment. In the imperial capital, only the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire could suppress her. Unfortunately, no one had managed to pluck the bright moon that was the Empress, and they could only look up at her from the ground. Ling Han's heart clenched. Why was he thinking of that Empress again? Impressive, really impressive. Many days had clearly passed, and he had not even clearly seen what the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire looked like, but that alluring image was already deeply ingrained in his bones, and would surface on its own from time to time. The title of the most beautiful woman in the world was definitely not just for show. It was at this moment that the large tree that they were leaning on suddenly moved. A few branches intertwined with each other, turning into a long spear that suddenly pierced towards the middle of Ling Han's back, wanting to pierce through the hearts of the two of them. Ling Han snickered, and said, "Finally can't hold it in anymore?" He stretched out a hand and pressed down, activating supergravity. Pa! The tree's spear immediately fell straight down, and heavily crashed into the ground. Shui Yenyu instantly came to her senses, and hurriedly pushed Ling Han away, and asked, "What's going on?" "It's nothing." Ling Han was just addicted to kissing her, and was about to kiss her again. Shio, 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 several hundred branches moved at the same time, either piercing or entangling towards Ling Han and Shui Yenyu. "Demonic tree!" Shui Yenyu instantly exclaimed. Only now did she remember what Ling Han had said previously, and couldn't help but exclaim, "You knew this was a demonic tree." Ling Han clenched his right fist, and peng, he smashed it onto the tree trunk. His present strength was too terrifying. With a single punch, the demonic tree was instantly snapped in half, green sap spraying everywhere. This demonic tree was only in the low extreme, so how could it possibly be a match for Ling Han? Of course. Otherwise, why would I choose this one over the others? Ling Han said with a smile. Shui Yenyu was practically speechless. This was supposed to be a very romantic thing, and he actually deliberately found a demonic tree as the background. She really didn't know what this man's brain was made of. "Let's go make a monkey," Ling Han said. "At first, it was to deceive your father, but if your stomach doesn't get bigger, it definitely won't be able to hide it for long. Go make a monkey yourself." Shui Yenyu waved her sleeves, and left. She was really infuriated. Ling Han sighed. With his current strength, suppressing Shui Yenyu was naturally a piece of cake, but why was it so difficult to make her obediently listen to him? The two of them returned, and saw that Hu Feiyun was already leaning against the fire, sleeping soundly. Their footsteps actually didn't wake her up. "I really don't know why Her Majesty the Empress is at ease to let her come in." Shui Yenyu was filled with curiosity, and thought that with Empress Yuan Xing's love for the 9 kings, this shouldn't be the case no matter what. Ling Han didn't speak of the scene he had witnessed. Hu Feiyun could summon a sliver of Empress Yuan Xing's might, and in this place, she was truly invincible. They, too, rested for a while. Sleep was the best adjustment, and nothing could replace it. After resting enough, they continued on their way. Another half a day later, the flame cave was already in sight. The flame cave was inside a large mountain, and the entrance was a massive cave. The ground around it was completely red, and one could vaguely feel lava surging underground. They didn't need to enter, and they could already feel the scorching heat from far away. If a gust of wind blew over from the cave entrance, their clothes would become charred, and even their hair could possibly be set on fire. Shui Yenyu and Hu Feiyun had already activated their origin power, forming a shield around their bodies to resist the heat waves. Only Ling Han was unaffected, but the material of his clothes couldn't bear it, so he was also forced to activate his origin power. Otherwise, he would have to run around naked. In future, he definitely had to find godly materials to make a robe that could block any harsh environment. Otherwise, he would face the embarrassment of being naked at every turn. "You two should stay here, I'll go in alone," Ling Han suggested. Hu Feiyun nodded hurriedly. She didn't have the slightest bit of initiative. Living a peaceful life was her highest ideal. Yet Shui Yenyu shook her head, and said, "I want to go in." Chapter 972. After Shui Yenyu and Hu Feiyun left, Ling Han began to seriously observe the cavern ahead. This cavern was very large, and because there was lava flowing in the underground river, it wasn't dark here, but it wasn't very bright either. He found a huge lava beast in the deepest part. Ordinary lava beasts were only 3 meters tall and 6 meters long, but this one was 15 meters tall and 30 meters long. Its skin was also darker, and covered in strange patterns. At this moment, it was sleeping on its stomach, its mouth open, and lava-like saliva rolled down, splashing onto the ground. Lava Beast King, its aura was extremely powerful, and even though they were separated by such a long distance, it still caused Ling Han's hair to stand on end and shiver. Late stage of the high extreme, peak stage, and even into the consummate level. Being stared at by Ling Han, the Beast King suddenly sensed something. It opened its eyes, raised its head, and looked around suspiciously. However, after looking around, it did not find anything out of place, so it lowered its head and went back to sleep. Hoo, its snoring was like thunder. Ling Han appeared from the Black Tower, and thought about how to snatch the Mountain River Stone. Snatching it by force was feasible. Ling Han calculated his battle prowess. Now, his cultivation was close to the peak of the low extreme, and his power had reached the medium extreme, close to the peak. Using a secret technique, his battle prowess could reach the peak of the medium extreme. He hadn't reached the high extreme yet. However, it was very likely that his opponent was in the consummate level, and had formed 4 mountain rivers. Merely in terms of power, it was an absolute suppression. Even if his physique was strong, and he had the indestructible Heaven Scroll to quickly recover, if the difference in power was too great, he wouldn't be able to get close at all, and would be knocked down with a single slap. Advancing rashly would only be taking a beating for nothing. More importantly, what was the point of fighting without knowing where the Mountain River Stone was? Ling Han's heart moved. If he used the annihilating Dragon Star Arrow? Though this Beast King's battle prowess was very frightening, it was so lazy that it didn't seem to have any vigilance, and was practically a live target. I'll give it a try. He took out his bow and fired the ultimate arrow. At the same time, he activated the Eye of Truth to search for the Beast King's weakness. However, the Lava Beast King abruptly stood up. It was true that it was lazy, but this kind of expert had an instinctive sense of danger. It could sense the murderous intent of others within a short distance, let alone when it was being pointed at by an arrow. It immediately ran in the direction of the cave entrance. The patterns on its skin shone, interweaving with flame divine patterns that could melt gold and melt bone. But when it ran to the entrance of the cave, it didn't discover anything. This made it very puzzled. It clearly felt a strong sense of danger, but why didn't it discover anything? Could it be that it played too crazily with a little beast yesterday and didn't have enough rest? It slowly walked back and lay down to sleep again. After that, inside the Black Tower, Ling Han's eyes lit up. Beneath the Beast King was a stone that stood out from the rest. Unlike the other stones, which were crimson in color, this one was pitch black. It was like a speck of green in a sea of flowers. It was too obvious. And on this stone, there were 7 scattered crimson stones. Even from so far away, Ling Han could be sure that they were Mountain River stones. Mountain River stones with special attributes possessed the power of flames here. Now that he knew where the Mountain River stones were, how to collect them was a big problem. Ling Han exited the Black Tower, drew out his bow again, and activated the annihilating Dragon Star Arrow. Ong! The Beast King was startled again, and ran over to investigate. However, it naturally returned empty-handed. Ling Han played hide-and-seek with it. After a dozen times, this Beast King was practically doubting life. When Ling Han drew out the annihilating Dragon Star Arrow again, it only raised its head lazily to look around, but didn't get up again. The sense of danger disappeared again. The Beast King lay down to sleep. It was almost certain that this had to be its imagination. It definitely had done too much last night. Once, twice, thrice. The Beast King's reaction became more and more indifferent. In the end, it didn't even bother to raise its head, and only blinked once. At this moment, Ling Han launched a fatal blow. Xiao, the divine arrow shot out, as fast as lightning. The Beast King suddenly opened its eyes, and when it discovered that streak of light shooting out, it was finally greatly shocked. It hurriedly tried to get up, and the patterns all over its body began to glow, interweaving into flames. However, it was too late. If it had reacted when Ling Han drew his bow, then with its powerful strength, it would definitely have been able to make full preparations. To say nothing else, merely the patterns all over its body glowed, interweaving into flames, and perhaps the arrow would directly be melted into molten iron. But the annihilating dragon star arrow had been shot, and it still wanted to dodge. What a joke. Perhaps a Sun Moon tier elite could do it, but it definitely couldn't be this Beast King. Pooh! The black arrow had already shot into the Beast King's eye, and not even the tail of the arrow could be seen. Ong! The Beast King released a furious roar of pain. Pa! The divine patterns on the arrow exploded, producing a terrifying destructive power. A quarter of the Beast King's head was blown off, and blood splattered everywhere. A few broken bones could also be seen. It was really unlucky. If it didn't open its eyes, its eyelids could at least provide some protection, but now, its eyes directly bore the might of this arrow. So what if it was a Beast King in the consummate level of the Mountain River tier? But a Beast King was a Beast King, after all. Even after taking such an arrow, it didn't die. Its single eye fixed on Ling Han, and finally discovered the culprit that had injured it. It roared angrily, and charged towards Ling Han with its 4 short legs. Hong, long, long, it stomped down, causing the whole cavern to tremble slightly. The patterns all over its body were already completely glowing, interweaving into divine flames that were enough to instantly burn cultivators in the low extreme or even medium extreme into ashes. I'm not going to play with you anymore. Ling Han's figure flashed, and instantly disappeared. Where was he? The Beast King flew over, and continued to search. Its single eye shone with a frightening ferocity, but it didn't discover anything. It was extremely furious. A quarter of its head had been blown off, and this was a serious injury, causing it both pain and fury. But what could it do if it couldn't find him? After searching wildly for a while, it could only retreat. It had to control its injuries as soon as possible, or its life would be in danger. But just at this moment, that despicable human appeared again. Another arrow was knocked, and he wanted to shoot it. Instantly, all the hair on the Beast King's body stood up. If it had won, it would have hurriedly stood up, divine flames interweaving all over its body, and assumed a defensive stance. Ling Han was only putting on an act. He had just shot out an annihilating dragon star arrow, and now all the strength in his body was exhausted, so how could he still fire another arrow? But it didn't matter that he couldn't fire an arrow. This Beast King was already frightened by the mere twang of a bow, and just putting on an act was enough to scare it to death. Meanwhile, Ling Han himself was using true origin stones to recover his origin power. Physical strength could slowly recover on its own, and though there was no way to speed it up, it recovered much faster than origin power. At most, it would only take a few dozen breaths' time to return to its full state. But what about that Beast King? The moment it thought of healing itself, Ling Han would scare it with arrows, causing it to immediately enter into a state as if it was facing a great enemy. Under such torment, it lost more and more blood, and its condition became worse and worse. Chapter 973. This was a consummate level Beast King, but it had just advanced into this cultivation level. Although it had formed 4 mountains, there were only 3 rivers, and the 4th mountain was clearly a size smaller. In this mystery realm, consummate level was practically invincible, but now this powerful Beast King was being toyed around in the palm of Ling Han's hand, and was only a hair's breadth away from death. After Ling Han drew his bow countless times to threaten it, this Beast King was already powerless to activate its divine flame. Its whole body lay on the ground, and only released angry roars from its nostrils. However, its might had already receded like the tide. Now, this Beast King was like a phoenix that had lost its feathers, and was inferior to a chicken. However, a centipede would not fall down even if it died, not to mention this was a consummate level Beast King, and its battle prowess might be 2 or 3 stars higher than its cultivation level. As long as it was still alive, it could not be underestimated. Ling Han did not act rashly. His physical strength had completely recovered, and his origin power was also almost completely recovered with the help of true origin stones. Naturally, he did not mind wasting a bit more time with it. The Beast King panted, its single eye still fierce, but its expression was becoming dimmer and dimmer. How much longer did he have to wait? Half a day, 1 day, or 3 days were one thing, but such a powerful demonic beast could be tormented for a few days even if it was about to die. Ling Han did not have much patience. He was afraid that if the time came, he would be expelled from the mystery realm, and the 7 mountain river stones below would no longer be his. He decided to take the risk, and his confidence came from his powerful physique and recovery ability. He walked towards the Beast King. "Seventh uncle, we've brought the crimson ground locking net this time. It will definitely be able to restrain that Beast King." In the flame cave, there were 4 people walking towards the deepest part of the cave. Their team was relatively powerful, and the demonic beasts they encountered on the way were all instantly killed by their combined forces. There was practically no pause. The clan prepared for this for over 1,000 years, and finally successfully refined the crimson ground locking net. As long as one is caught in the net, their cultivation level will be forcibly suppressed by a minor level. An elder stroked his beard and smiled. Among the 4 people, only he had a head full of white hair. The other 3 were all young, but their cultivation levels were not weak. The lowest was in the late stage of the low extreme, and the remaining 2 were in the peak stage of the low extreme. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to sweep through all of them. If Ling Han had seen them, he would have recognized them as the 4 members of the Luo clan. Before entering the Arcana realm, they had revealed obvious killing intent. However, after entering the Arcana realm, they had randomly appeared in different places, so Ling Han had not had the chance to meet them. "Damn it, we've never encountered that ant from that small world," said one of the youths. There's no need to take him to heart. If we don't encounter him, so be it. In any case, the Dark Knight Hall has already accepted the mission, so that brat definitely won't be able to escape death. The main focus this time is to kill that Beast King and obtain the Flame Mountain River stones, the elder said seriously. "Yes." The other 3 young men replied sternly. Although this old man's talent was not very high and he had only become a 4-star genius by relying on a secret technique, there was no room for him to improve further. However, at the very least, his current strength was enough to suppress them. Moreover, this was a contribution to the family. He had given up a chance to advance, so he had to be respected. The elder nodded, and said, "That Beast King is in existence at the peak stage of the high extreme. Even if it has been weakened by a minor level, it is still at the peak stage of the medium extreme, and the lava beast is born with the ability to control divine fire. The Beast King's battle prowess can still reach the early stage of the high extreme, so we must not be careless. Don't worry, 7th uncle. We all have god tools in our hands, which are enough to increase our battle prowess by another star. As long as you keep the Beast King busy, we will be able to severely wound it and exhaust it to death," one of the youths said. That's the kind of determination I want." The elder was very satisfied. Ling Han approached, but the Beast King did not have any reaction, as if it was so heavily injured that it did not even have the strength to raise its claws. If you continue to pretend to be dead, then I'll directly subdue you." Ling Han condensed his divine sense, and suddenly blasted out with the 7-kill subduing soul technique. This had not been of much use before. The Beast King's cultivation level was too high, and its divine sense was naturally able to crush him. If he used his spirit to attack it, it was very likely that he would receive a splitting headache from the backlash. But it was different now. This Beast King was already at the end of its rope, and its divine sense had weakened to the extreme. Hong! The Beast King suddenly raised its claws, and swatted at Ling Han. This strike was still powerful and domineering. I tricked you once, so I'll take a hit from you head-on so that you won't die in vain." Ling Han did not hide into the Black Tower, but instead shot out a strike at full power to resist. Wang, golden light blazed in his palms, and the earth overturning seal spread out, forming multiple divine patterns in the center of his palms. Peng He took a hit from the Beast King head-on, and was instantly swept away. The power of the two sides was not on the same level at all. Wah! Ling Han's body crashed into the cavern wall, and then bounced back, lying on the ground. He opened his mouth, and spat out a mouthful of blood. He wiped the corner of his mouth, and felt as if his body was boiling, extremely uncomfortable. As expected of the consummate level, the power is really shocking. Ling Han crawled up. Pa, 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 a few dislocated bones instantly returned to their places. His physique was really too strong. Even a strike from the consummate level could not break his bones, and only dislocated them. Of course, this was also because the Beast King was heavily injured, and could not explode with its strongest power no matter what. The Beast King stared at him with its single eye. There was shock, confusion, and anger in its eyes, but there was also a sliver of resignation. It could not kill this human with a full power strike, so it was not wrong for it to die in his opponent's hands. It was already in a state of dying, and after forcefully exploding with its full power, it was even worse. It could not even open its eyelid, and its single eye slowly closed. I'll send you on your last journey. Ling Han shot out a 7-kill subduing soul technique, paralyzing this Beast King, and drew it into the Black Tower. He used supreme power to kill this Beast King, so that it would not have to endure any more pain. Ling Han's eyes turned to the 7 mountain river stones on the black rock, and a smile appeared at the corners of his lips. After working so hard for so long, it was finally time to reap the rewards. His sharp divine sense discovered a sliver of movement, and he immediately turned around. Shio, 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 shio. 4 people suddenly rushed in from the entrance, 1 old and 3 young. Each of them grabbed a corner of a giant net, and used their origin power to activate it, causing the giant net to exude a crimson glow. They were naturally the 4 members of the Luo clan. They had taken out the crimson ground-locking net at the entrance, and activated it in advance. Then, they leaped in, wanting to launch a sneak attack on that Beast King, and use this divine net to trap it. However, when they suddenly rushed in, they discovered that there was no sign of the Beast King. On the contrary, there was only a young man staring at them. It's you. The 4 of them suddenly recognized him. Wasn't this the ant from the small world? Ha 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 ha, I searched high and low for it, but found it without any effort. One of the young men laughed loudly. Chapter 974. Mountain River Stones. The old man from the Luo clan stared at the 7 mountain river stones on the black boulder, his eyes burning. 7 special attribute mountain river stones. If they were all spent on one person, the Luo clan would nurture a super prodigy. On the other hand, although he was a 4-star genius, he could only stay in the low extreme forever. He was a freak that was forcefully nurtured for the heavenly sea mystery realm. In this world full of immortal level elites, what was the battle prowess of the peak stage of the medium extreme? What the Luo clan needed was battle prowess of the sun-moon tier, or even the heavenly body tier. 7 special attribute mountain river stones could increase one's battle prowess by 1 star. There was no doubt that it would increase one's battle prowess from 1 star to 2 stars, but it was not certain that it would increase from 2 stars to 3 stars, and from 3 stars to 4 stars. It was naturally more difficult to increase one's battle prowess further. For a 4-star genius, perhaps 7 mountain river stones would not even increase their battle prowess by half a star. No matter what, special attribute mountain river stones were precious treasures, and also the focus of their trip. For a moment, the 4 people from the Luo clan did not wonder where the Beast King had gone, and why Ling Han had appeared here. They did not care. Hao Min, go get the mountain river stones, the old man from the Luo clan instructed. Luo Hao Min nodded hurriedly, and said, yes, 7th uncle. He strode towards the black boulder, his face filled with uncontrollable excitement. He was a talent that the Luo clan had focused on nurturing, and had arrived thousands of years earlier than Luo Ba and Luo Lai. However, in terms of talent, he was slightly inferior to Luo Ba. Among the people that the clan focused on nurturing, his ranking was below Luo Ba. But now that Luo Ba was dead, his ranking had risen, and he had the right to use these special mountain river stones. Hey, don't reach out for things that are not yours. You're either a thief or a robber, Ling Han said with a smile. His figure flashed, and he was even faster than Luo Haomin. Since I am here, there is still a share for you. The old man from the Luo clan sneered. He released the hand that was holding the giant net, and leaped out, intercepting Ling Han. He did not take Ling Han seriously at all. He was merely at the Shattering Void tier, so what if he was invincible? That was only limited to the level of mortals. But once he entered the divine realm, it was really not enough. Ling Han didn't take out his bow and arrow. He used his body as a bow and his origin energy as an arrow, shooting towards Luo Haomin. What kind of power was he now? He was close to the peak stage of the medium extreme. Thus, when he used the annihilating dragon star arrow technique to control this arrow, even without a bow or arrow, the might of this strike had reached the peak stage of the medium extreme. Luo Haomin similarly didn't take Ling Han seriously. Moreover, he still had seventh uncle to take care of him from behind. In his eyes, there were only those 7 mountain river stones. This was an astonishing amount of wealth. Honestly speaking, even if he sold himself, he still wouldn't be able to compare. He didn't pay any attention to them and continued to dash forward. How fast was the annihilating dragon star arrow? Puff Luo Haomin was instantly hit by the arrow. The elemental energy arrow pierced through his back and exited through his chest. At this moment, his elemental energy was almost depleted. With a flash, the entire arrow disappeared into thin air. How is that possible? Luo Haomin slowly turned around and reached out to grab something, but his body had already fallen backwards when his hand was only halfway out. Peng! He collapsed onto the ground, his aura completely gone. He was at the peak stage of the low extreme, and furthermore, he was a 1-star genius, yet he had actually been killed with a single strike. The old man from the Luo clan was both furious and shocked. He had already caught up to Ling Han, and with a loud roar, he punched out at Ling Han. You killed my people, so I'll kill you. He roared. Die. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, you still can't do it. He also punched out at the old man. Peng! With a single strike, the old man from the Luo clan was instantly sent flying. It was true that he was at the peak stage of the low extreme, and it was also true that he was also a 4-star genius. However, his power definitely couldn't reach the medium extreme. Facing Ling Han head-on was simply asking for trouble. Ling Han withdrew his fist and continued to walk towards the black boulder in a calm and unruffled manner. Only now did the 3 members of the Luo clan reveal expressions of astonishment. They were completely unable to imagine that Ling Han had clearly only been at the Shattering Void tier when he had entered the Mystery Realm. How had he become so powerful that he could even force back a cultivator at the peak stage of the medium extreme of the Mountain River tier after a dozen or so days? Mountain River Stone. The old man from the Luo clan immediately understood. Only Mountain River stones could allow a Shattering Void tier cultivator to advance to the Mountain River tier effortlessly. Moreover, they could advance so quickly that they wouldn't encounter any bottlenecks before reaching the peak stage of the low extreme. Gasp! Just how many Mountain River stones did this brat obtain? The 2 youths from the Luo clan also understood, and couldn't help but go crazy with jealousy. They had already entered this place dozens of times, but they had only obtained 3 Mountain River stones in total, and they were all ordinary ones. Use the Crimson Ground locking net. Capture him. The old man from the Luo clan didn't dare to underestimate Ling Han anymore. This ant from a small world was already extremely powerful at the Shattering Void tier, and now that he had advanced to the Mountain River tier, even if he had used Mountain River stones to advance, he was no different from a true Mountain River tier before reaching the medium extreme. One had to realize that this brat had passed 8 levels when he entered the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and had the potential to become a 4-star genius. The 3 of them unfurled the large net, and enveloped Ling Han. Ling Han put away the 7 Mountain River stones first. He definitely couldn't lose them. However, this way, he didn't have time to dodge, and was enveloped by the large net. He was slightly surprised because the large net was exuding a mysterious power that forcefully suppressed his cultivation level. He had originally been close to the peak stage of the low extreme, but now he was barely in the early stage, so he could just barely be considered to be in the Mountain River tier. Ha ha ha. The 3 from the Luo clan laughed loudly. This was the Crimson Ground Locking Net, and it had been created to deal with the Lava Beast King. Who knew how much wealth the Luo clan had spent to create it? However, as long as they could capture that Beast King, it would be worth it no matter what price they had to pay. Because this time, next time, and the time after that, they would be able to obtain an endless stream of special attribute Mountain River stones. Even the Beast King couldn't stop it, what more Ling Han? He had already entered the net, so he was like a turtle in a jar. Brat, obediently hand over the Mountain River stones. If I'm in a good mood, I might grant you a quick death, a young man said. His name was Luo Jian. Humph. He dared to kill a member of the Luo clan, so it wouldn't be too much to dismember him. It's a pity that this can't be made public, the elder from the Luo clan said with some pity. Killing in the Mystery Realm was because there was no evidence left. However, killing a disciple of the Scarlet Heaven Academy could be done in public? Unless the Luo clan didn't want to stay in the Chaotic Star's majestic empire anymore. Then I'll slowly refine him. A cruel smile spread across Luo Jian's face. He knew that Ling Han's physique was incredibly tough, comparable to level 1 godly metal. Die! The elder from the Luo clan drew out a sword. There were veined patterns on the blade, and under his control, it exuded an astonishing light. This was a level 1 god tool, and it had been bestowed by the clan for this trip to the Mystery Realm. He raised the sword and pierced it towards Ling Han's heart. Chapter 976. In a battle between experts, the slightest difference can lead to a huge loss. The main reason for this was because Ling Han was much stronger than the Luo clan's patriarch. Thus, after he used the divine runes of gravity, he was able to clearly affect the Luo clan's patriarch. Otherwise, the effects wouldn't be so obvious. As the saying goes, a single force can break through a myriad of techniques. When one's strength could crush an opponent, any technique was no longer important. Ling Han's strength was not that strong, but it was easy for him to affect the Luo family elder. Despicable brat. The elder from the Luo family had already been struck a few times. His white hair was in a mess, and he was in an extremely sorry state. He shouted, "You've offended my Luo family. You'll die a horrible death. Not only will you die, but your parents will also be slaughtered, your women will be ravaged, and your children will be slaves for all eternity. My Luo clan has been passed down for millions of years. How can a trash from a small world like you possibly shake us? How can you match us?" Ling Han's expression immediately turned cold, and he said, "What a cheap mouth." He used 10,000 techniques return to 1. Instantly, the sword ray turned into a long and thick beam of light that slashed towards his opponent. In the Shattering Void tier, even if he channeled 10,000 techniques return to 1, he would still need to slightly condense origin power, but now, he could casually wave it out. This meant that the 10,000 techniques return to 1 was no longer able to consume too much of his elemental energy, so he could easily unleash it. This also meant that the might of the attack had been weakened. There was nothing that could be done. This was only a sword technique from a Sun-Moon tier force, so how powerful could it be? However, the power of the sword was still quite extraordinary. It raised Ling Han's combat strength to the level of 5 stars. Bang bang bang! The old man from the Luo family turned pale with fright after several moves. He exclaimed, You're a 5-star genius. He was a sub-minor level higher than Ling Han, and he himself was a 4-star genius. But now, he could only fight to a draw with Ling Han and was even at a disadvantage. There was only one possibility: his opponent was a 5-star genius. This was far too terrifying. Even the left and right ministers and the 7 generals were only 4-star geniuses. Only Empress Yuan Xing had reached the legendary 5-star level. This kind of enemy must be eliminated in the cradle, otherwise the Luo family will be consigned to eternal damnation. 5 stars. Ling Han chuckled. He didn't take out the annihilating Dragon Star Arrow's ultimate arrow to scare the old man. Otherwise, the old man might have fainted from fright. However, secret techniques were limited by their cultivation level. For example, when he used the 3 styles of Black Origin now, he could increase his battle prowess by 1 star. However, when he advanced to the Heavenly Body tier, the might of these 3 styles would definitely decrease sharply. It would be impossible for them to have such an effect again. Therefore, power was eternal, and that was the true strength. Ling Han nodded internally. It was very wise of him to raise his power to the limit of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier before breaking through. He unceasingly used the divine runes of gravity to affect the old man from the Luo clan. Under his control, the divine runes produced a miraculous effect, causing the old man from the Luo clan to constantly stumble back and forth. His combat prowess was greatly affected. In order to defeat an opponent, the method wasn't limited to increasing one's own battle prowess. Weakening the opponent was also possible. For example, the group of 4 from the Luo clan had come with the Crimson Ground locking net. Wasn't it to weaken the Lava Beast King and pull the battle prowess of both sides to the same level? Then, they could use their rich experience to defeat the other party. However, they didn't know that the Beast King had already advanced to the consummate level. Even if they had the Crimson Ground locking net, it was still more likely that they would be defeated. Under Ling Han's continuous barrage of attacks, the old man from the Luo clan was also wounded repeatedly. In the end, his sword pierced through his heart. He grabbed the blade of his sword with both hands, and glared at Ling Han with resentment in his eyes. He said, "Ha ha ha ha, you're a 5-star genius. This isn't a good thing. Once people find out, countless people will target you and kill you. I'll wait for you in the netherworld." After saying this, he reluctantly swallowed his anger. Ling Han lightly shook his sword, and put it back into the Black Tower. He calmly said, "You don't need to worry about that. When I'm strong enough, I'll push down the Luo clan first, and have them accompany you." He searched out the spatial spirit tools of the 4 from the Luo clan, and robbed them of several hundred true origin stones. Additionally, there was also an ordinary mountain river stone. This caused him to shake his head repeatedly. He had obtained 10 special mountain river stones. After returning to the depths of the cave, he picked up the Crimson Ground locking net again. This item wasn't bad, and could greatly reduce the opponent's cultivation level. However, he didn't know what its limit was. Could it be effective against Sun-Moon tier elites? With this item, I can easily suppress even elites in the high extreme. He turned his attention to the large black rock. The appearance of an item that was completely out of place in this environment would naturally arouse his curiosity. Moreover, why was the Lava Beast King lying on this rock? Why would a mountain river stone appear on it? He tried to lift the rock, but couldn't move it. Had it fused with the ground, or was its own weight too astonishing? Ling Han tried to stretch out his divine sense and wrap it around the rock. As long as he could do this, he could put it into the Black Tower, no matter how heavy it was. The environment here was harsh. Ling Han's physique wasn't afraid, but his divine sense hadn't been cultivated to such a powerful level. After entering deep underground, it was immediately pricked by the boiling lava, making him want to immediately withdraw his divine sense. He forcefully suppressed this urge, and continued to spread out the net of divine sense. Bit by bit, he spent close to the time of an incense stick. Finally, a smile appeared on Ling Han's face. Wang, the black rock instantly disappeared. He stretched out his head, and saw that there was a pit that was as deep as 7 meters in the ground. The bottom of the pit was actually black, and he didn't know whether it was water, metal, or something else. It was terrifyingly deep. Ling Han threw a rock down. Pa! The rock instantly exploded, turning into dust. He was extremely shocked. One had to know that the rock structure here was relatively stable. At least, he could only create some sparks under a full power strike, but now, it collapsed with a single touch. Its destructive power was truly terrifying. Wang. Just at this moment, a shocking scene appeared. A human face actually emerged from under the black rock. However, this black rock seemed to be extremely elastic. It was continuously stretched, but didn't break. Though this human face was completely normal, with a nose, a mouth, and eyes, it was too big. How big was the black rock earlier? This face was only slightly smaller, larger than a manhole cover. It was really hard to imagine how shocking this person's true size was. Even separated by such a layer, Ling Han could still feel a terrifying aura coming from that human face. There was a kind of trembling that made even his soul tremble. So powerful. This was definitely not the sun-moon tier, but even surpassed the heavenly body tier. Ling Han suddenly understood. That black rock was definitely not placed there for his own good, but to suppress this cage, or in other words, the passageway. When this face reached a distance of almost 9 meters, it finally reached its limit, unable to advance any further. This human face showed a smile, and began to speak, but no sound came out. But after a while, a voice sounded in Ling Han's sea of consciousness. Lowly human, help me open the passageway, and I can grant you a lifetime of glory. Ling Han laughed, and said, Is this the attitude you use to ask for help? Chapter 977. Ling Han didn't have the ability to use his spiritual sense to penetrate that black mass. That black mass could easily shatter rocks. If his spiritual sense touched it, it would definitely be destroyed. From this, it could be seen that the person in front of him was much, much stronger than him. However, the other party could not come over. Otherwise, there would be no need to tempt him. Lowly human, do you know who I am? The human face opened its mouth, but after a while, a voice rang in Ling Han's mind. Open the passage for me, and I can even grant you a country for you to rule. Ling Han was very interested in this person's identity and said, Oh, who are you? His voice and divine sense couldn't reach the other side, but the person opposite him was too powerful and could hear his voice. The person sneered and said, I'm one of the strongest people in the world. You can call me Devil Lord Zhen Yi. Ling Han was startled and said, You're from the netherworld. Generally speaking, only the creatures of the netherworld would call themselves devils. In the netherworld, demons were not derogatory. Instead, they were symbols of power, just like gods. What kind of level was a demon master? Ling Han wasn't very sure, but he knew that this demon master Zhen Yi was possibly even more powerful than Empress Yuan Xing. It was rumored that this mystery realm had been left behind by a great elite of the Genesis tier. Then, it was extremely likely that this was the weak point of the immortal realm and the netherworld, and could be opened up, forming a passageway that connected the two realms. In that case, this patch of black was the boundary between the god realm and the netherworld. Ha ha ha, that's right. I'm also an all-powerful expert in the netherworld. Human, hurry up and help me open the passage. I can bestow upon you the identity of a demon servant and teach you supreme demonic arts, Demon Master Zhen Yi tempted. Have you become stupid from cultivating demonic arts? Ling Han snorted. You should continue staying there. Human. Demon Master Zhen Yi roared furiously. This realm wall won't be able to hold me back for long. It's just a matter of a few hundred or a few thousand years. I'm giving you a chance to gain glory for all eternity. Once I break through, I'll definitely throw you into the devil prison and make you suffer a fate worse than death. Then I'll be waiting. Ling Han said with a smile. Also, what demon master? You actually dare to threaten a mere mountain river tier cultivator like me? You really have some face. Demon Master Zhen Yi was speechless. In reality, if it weren't for the fact that he was in an extremely dire situation, why would he need the help of a cultivator at the mountain river tier? He humphed, and said, "Human, this is your last chance. Don't make a mistake." After Ling Han knew the other party's identity, how could he have the thought of asking a tiger for its skin? His attention was focused on the inside of the Black Tower, and he saw that there were multiple divine patterns at the bottom of the black rock, which were incredibly complicated. No wonder it could suppress this place. Ling Han did not dare to be greedy. With a thought, the black stone appeared out of thin air and fell into the pit. Demon Master Zhen Yi's face revealed an obvious expression of anger, but it was quickly blocked by the black rock. Peng! The black rock crushed Demon Master Zhen Yi, and the deep pit instantly disappeared. No! Demon Master Zhen Yi's voice reverberated in Ling Han's mind. However, it was immediately cut off. It was clear that the black rock was very effective in suppressing this place. Ling Han sat on the ground and thought for a while before standing up. If this mystery realm existed to suppress the passageway between the two realms, then why would it allow people to enter? Moreover, it even had a treasure like the Mountain River Stone. Wasn't it purposely trying to lure people into it? However, if this mystery realm was made into a completely inaccessible place, it was likely that many people would try their best to enter it. After all, the way of thinking of humans was very strange. If you don't let me enter, then I'll insist on entering. Moreover, if one could enter once every 10 years, and the strongest cultivator would only be at the low extreme of the mountain river tier, this wouldn't have much of an impact on this place. Ling Han was a special case. As the saying went, it was better to disperse than to block it. Right now, everyone's attention was completely focused on the mountain river stone, so they naturally would not care about what the mystery realm was suppressing. However, this wasn't a long-term solution. One day, the barrier would still be broken through. Ling Han walked out of the cavern. He had made a huge profit this time. He had obtained a whopping 8 mountain river stones, and 7 of them were of special attributes. In addition, he had also obtained spiritual meat. When he returned, he would be able to break through to the immortal level of the body refinement realm. On his way out, he encountered a few people. They were naturally here to search for treasures. They all stared at him cautiously, and only left quickly after passing by him. In this place, who would dare to be careless? After half a day, he finally walked out of the large cavern. He saw 2 women sitting together on a large rock in front of him. Both of them were astonishingly beautiful. However, one was cute and naive, while the other was seductive. They had completely different styles. They were Shui Yanyu and Hu Feiyun. Ling Han, you're finally out. You made big sister Shui and I wait for so long. Hu Feiyun immediately complained. Ling Han glanced at Shui Yanyu with a smile, and said, I made you worry. I didn't. Shui Yanyu was very stubborn, and refused to admit it. How was it? How was it? Did you kill that big ugly monster? Hu Feiyun asked hurriedly. They had waited for so long, so they naturally wanted to know the result. However, Shui Yanyu smiled, and said, that lava beast king was at the peak stage of the high extreme, so how could I kill it? It was luck that I could steal a mountain river stone. Ling Han pretended to pinch Shui Yanyu's pretty face, and said, how dare you look down on your husband like this? What punishment do you deserve? Shui Yanyu hurriedly jumped away, her face flushed red, and she scolded, pervert. Ling Han chuckled, and said, this counts as a pervert. You're really too naive. Shui Yanyu couldn't help but recall the scene of him pushing her and kissing her. Her pretty face heated up, and her eyes turned into ripples of water, filled with seductive charm. Ling Han didn't dare to continue. That bewitching woman was too seductive, and he was really afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself and drag her into the Black Tower. Next, it seems like the Windmill Mountain is the closest to us. Ling Han looked at the map, and pointed to a place. The Windmill Mountain was another place that produced special mountain river stones. There were a total of 18 peaks on this mountain, and they were like windmills. The 18 peaks formed a wheel, half of which was underground, and the other half was above ground, and would rotate at fixed intervals. Once it rotated, it would create a terrifying gust of wind that could easily tear cultivators to shreds. Thus, it was difficult to obtain mountain river stones here. In fact, it was even more dangerous than the Flame Cave, and one could easily lose their life. The special mountain river stones produced here were of the metal attribute, and could allow cultivators to cultivate sharp divine patterns. When they launched an attack, their destructive power would increase greatly. The group of three set out again, but they hadn't even walked halfway when they felt an indescribable power attack them. Shio, they had already disappeared from where they were, and when they reappeared, they were already in a stretch of wilderness. Not only them, but at least 1,000 people were also looking around with blank expressions. Moreover, the powerful figures that had escorted them all leaped over. The Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm was closed. And this was the end? Ling Han felt that it was a great pity. There were a total of 6 places in the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm that produced special mountain river stones, but he had only gone to 2 places, and it was completely not enough. But in a mere instant, he discovered that a few killing intents had locked onto him. Shua, a flash of sword light suddenly slashed over, wanting to take his life. Chapter 978. This slash was incomparably resplendent, and even the sun in the sky paled in comparison. He was definitely not an elite of the sun-moon tier, but rather a great elite of the heavenly body tier. Ling Han's first reaction was to hide inside the Black Tower. This was not a question of courage. Even if his current physique was comparable to level 2 godly metal, so what? A single slash from the sword would definitely turn him into ashes. However, right at this moment, a golden staff suddenly descended from the sky and appeared in front of him. The divine patterns on the staff lit up and formed a golden area that protected him, Shui Yanyu, and Hu Feiyun behind him. Ding! The sword light slashed onto the rod, causing a series of sparks to explode. Boom! A terrifying wave of chi streaked across the 2 sides of the golden area and the sky above it. Those were numerous sword patterns that caused the space to become slightly unstable, as if it was about to split apart. You dare to kill my people in front of me? How dare you? A mighty figure appeared in front of Ling Han, one hand firmly grasping the staff, giving off a domineering aura. Ding Lihen, one of the 7 generals of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. He was tall and sturdy, and he wore a crimson armor that was covered in divine runes. It was clearly a divine artifact. His black hair danced wildly in the wind, and the way he held the golden rod in his hand made him look like an undefeatable god of war. One man holds the pass against 10,000 enemies. The most famous battle of this elite was when he charged into the Eternity Heaven Majestic Empire alone, and killed a traitor in the enemy's imperial capital. In the end, he even successfully broke out of the encirclement and returned to the Chaotic Star's majestic empire alive. Of course, he had also paid a huge price, and had almost died. It took him a few hundred years to recover from his wounds, and it was said that there were still residual effects. Otherwise, he could possibly have broken through to the medium extreme of the heavenly body tier. Great General Ding, you're being too serious. You're merely at the mountain river tier, and I've killed who knows how many in the blink of an eye. A middle-aged man slowly walked out. His skin was so fair that it was almost translucent. King Enlon, do you want to fight me? Ding Lian drew his staff and pointed it at the middle-aged man. His battle intent soared into the sky, and a star materialized behind him, exuding an aura that could suppress the heavens. If a normal person was struck by a finger like this, their skin would have most likely burst open. However, this middle-aged man who was referred to as King Enlon didn't seem to care in the slightest. He was the conferred king of the Sky Empire. Not only was he extremely powerful, but he also enjoyed an extremely high status. Thus, he naturally wasn't afraid of Ding Lihen. He said indifferently, "This king wants this brat's life. I must kill him today." Ling Han smirked coldly, and said, "Dare I ask King Enlon, how have I offended you?" At first, he didn't have the right to converse with a heavenly body tier elite. However, this person was about to kill him, so how could he still care? A look of disdain appeared on King Enlan's face. A mere ant in the low extreme of the mountain river tier actually dared to stand and speak to him? How audacious! He completely ignored Ding Lihen, and continued to stare at him. Ding Lihen's expression was cold as he said, "Do you think I don't know that this brat has ascended the Crimson Lake Island 3 times? You're worried that he'll become a great threat to the Sky Empire in the future, right? Ha, so what if that's the case?" King Enlon didn't deny it. At their level, it wasn't too low for them to lie with their eyes wide open. He chuckled, and said, "However, this brat only has some potential. Even if he can truly unleash his potential, it'll be at least a few 100,000 years later. Why is Great General Ding protecting him? Then why are you in such a hurry to make a move, King Enlon?" Ding Lihen retorted. "Great General Ding, I've heard that you've always had a crush on the Empress. Aren't you afraid that this person's extraordinary talent will attract the Empress's interest? In fact..." Hee. King Enlon suddenly changed the topic. This was Ding Lihen's weakness. He was deeply in love with the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. This was a secret that almost everyone knew. However, his power was too great, and he was too powerful. Moreover, the other party involved was the Empress, so who would dare to speak carelessly about this? Now that King Enlon had exposed this secret, Ding Lihen's expression instantly changed, and a terrifying killing intent appeared on his face. The Empress was his weakness, as well as his reverse scale. She was even more sacred and inviolable. "King Enlon, are you seeking death?" Ding Lihen's killing intent boiled over. He was deeply in love with the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, yet he felt ashamed of his own inferiority. He believed that there was no man in this world who was worthy of the Empress. Now that Ding Lihen actually dared to look down on the Empress, his killing intent surged. King Enlon couldn't help but falter. He hadn't expected that he would fail to sow discord, and instead incite Ding Lihen's killing intent. He had truly outsmarted himself. "Ha, I also feel that this brat is an eyesore, and I want to get rid of him as soon as possible." Another voice traveled over. A white-robed man had appeared beside Ding Lihen and King Enlon. His features were as handsome as jade, and he was a rare beauty. However, his peach blossom eyes were far too flirtatious, and it was clear that he was an experienced playboy. "Qi Feng," Ding Lihen said solemnly. Qi Feng was a great general of the Eternity Sky majestic empire. His status was equal to Ding Lihen's, and his strength was also equal. When Ding Lihen had charged into the Eternity Sky majestic empire, he had been one of the elites who had chased after him. However, it was a pity that Ding Lihen had still managed to escape back to the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. This was something that he had been brooding over ever since. The two of them could be said to be old rivals. However, it had been a very long time since the 3 great empires had declared war, so they hadn't fought each other for a very, very long time. "Ding Lihen, hand over that brat. Otherwise, I don't mind joining forces with King Enlon," Qi Feng said in a menacing voice. Ling Han was astonished. He had only ascended the island 3 times, yet even an elite of the heavenly body tier wanted to get rid of him. "You're really in the limelight this time," Shui Yanyu said in a low voice. When Zhao Luan ascended the island for the second time, he also encountered an assassination when he was about to leave. However, his reputation had already risen at that time. Thus, aside from Great General Sha Jing, who was escorting him, Great General Zhao Jianbai was also escorting him in secret. That was how they managed to stop the attacks from the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire and Jade Drop Majestic Empire. An expression of worry appeared on her face. Who would have thought that Ling Han would be even more freakish this time? He had ascended the Crimson Lake Island 3 times. He was many times more freakish than Zhao Luan, so it would be strange if the 2 majestic empires didn't make a move. However, there was only a single great general, Ding Lihen. How could he stop 2 elites of the heavenly body tier? King Enlon crossed his arms in front of his chest, a sinister sneer on his face. Meanwhile, Ding Lihen's expression was completely wild. He waved his staff around a few times before resting it on his shoulder, and said, "You guys can go ahead and try. However, I'm warning you. If one of you wants to pin me down, while the other wants to kill me, then I won't be polite either. None of the juniors that you've brought along will return alive." Once these words were spoken, not only did King Enlon and Shui Yenyu's expressions change, but the challengers from the 2 majestic empires were also trembling in fear. These words came from the mouth of an elite of the heavenly body tier, so who would dare to take them as a joke? Ding Lihen, then let me experience what level your Northern Desert Crimson Sun technique has reached. Qi Feng's fists bulged. He looked like a frail scholar, yet his forte lay in fist techniques. He was renowned for his ferocious close-quarters combat. I, too, would like to experience General Ding's supreme staff techniques. King Enlon brandished his sword, and a boundless divine might rippled through the air. Chapter 980. Ding Lihen must have only just mastered the 9th form of the staff technique, as the intent realm he displayed was extremely dry. Couldn't you have mastered it a little later? King Enlon and Qi Feng both grumbled in their minds. It was already very difficult for them to increase their strength after reaching their current level. They had both been stuck at this cultivation base for hundreds of thousands of years, and their cultivation bases had already become extremely solid. Even a slight increase in their cultivation base was extremely difficult. However, if they could take another step forward, it would be enough for them to gain an advantage in battle. Ding Lihen smiled proudly, and said, "Eat my staff." His staff was pointed toward the sky, and it was as if he was going to smash it down. However, when he raised his staff, streaks of golden light condensed and formed a circle of Ding Lihen. There were a total of 36 of them, and they surrounded King Enlon and Qi Feng in the center. They all raised their staffs in unison, and it was as if they were golden war Buddhas. King Enlon and Qi Feng didn't dare to be careless, and they both unleashed their battle prowess to the maximum. This powerful opponent had taken another small step forward, and this made their hearts tremble. Boom! The 36 Ding Lihen swung their staffs at the same time. Peng, 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 peng. The sky became a world of interweaving brilliant lights, and the entire heaven and earth became dim. This was because the brilliant lights were too bright, and the contrast was too stark. When the brilliant lights dissipated, King Enlon and Qi Feng could be seen to have blood at the corners of their mouths. It was clear that they had been injured. Ding Lihen also spat out a mouthful of blood. However, the blood was golden in color, and it immediately burst into flames as soon as it came out of his mouth. It was completely incinerated before it could even land on the ground. Ha ha ha! Qi Feng laughed loudly, and said, "Ding Lihen, you haven't truly mastered the 9th form of the staff technique. You're only forcefully executing it by boiling your blood essence. You're risking your life. How many more attacks can you unleash?" Ding Lihen stood proudly in the sky, and his black hair danced in the wind. His battle intent soared into the sky, and it was almost tangible. He said heroically, "Don't worry, I guarantee that I can beat you to death." Qi Feng couldn't help but have his aura stolen, and he couldn't help but humph. He indeed wanted to kill Ling Han to eliminate a potential threat, but if he had to be severely injured or even lose his life for this, then he would definitely not do it. Ding Lian had shown that he was willing to fight to the death for this. However, he lacked this determination. If the two of them fought, there was a high chance that he would lose. King Enlon also frowned upon hearing this. He hadn't thought that Ding Lian would risk his life to protect a measly cultivator at the mountain river tier. It was said that among the 7 generals, Ding Lian was the most loyal to Empress Yuan Xing. The Empress wanted him to escort these trial takers, so he carried out her orders without the slightest bit of hesitation. In fact, he did not even hesitate to risk his life. Heavenly body tier elites were actually so foolishly loyal. King Enlon had never seen Empress Yuan Xing before, but he had long heard of her name. She was known as the most beautiful woman in the world, and even the emperors of 2 majestic empires were head over heels for her. A sense of curiosity involuntarily welled up in his heart, and he really wanted to meet this empress. Just what kind of beauty was she that could cause an elite like Ding Lian to be so obsessed? Qi Feng's heart was already in chaos, and he, too, did not have the determination to fight to the death. Thus, there was no need for this battle to continue. King Enlon smiled faintly, and said, "Since Great General Ding is so determined, we'll give you some face and not kill this brat." In any case, Ling Han was only in the low extreme of the mountain river tier, and he was still very far away from the heavenly body tier. There would be plenty of opportunities to kill him in the future. Qi Feng did not speak. He was extremely displeased to be suppressed by his mortal enemy in terms of aura. Ding Lian rested his staff on his shoulder, and merely chuckled coldly. He did not appreciate King Enlan's kindness at all. Face was earned through battle, and definitely not out of charity. However, we won't make a move. How about letting the juniors test their skills? King Enlan suddenly changed the topic. It was clear that he had not given up on killing Ling Han. Fine. Ding Lian's reply was very straightforward this time. He waved his hand, and said, "As long as their cultivation level is the same or their age is similar, I will not interfere." If he still could not defeat Ling Han, then such trash deserved to die. The 3 elites landed on the ground at the same time. King Enlon smiled as he asked the juniors of the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire, "Which one of you wants to battle with that prodigy from the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire? Whoever is able to kill that human shall be taken in as my disciple." Qi Feng tossed out a handsome reward right away. For a time, no one responded. In the Crimson Lake, many people had seen Ling Han in action. That guy was practically a freak. He was completely unscathed even after falling into the Crimson Lake. Who could match up to such a defense? Moreover, the fact that he had reached the island 3 times was already a clear indication of his strength. It wasn't that one's cultivation level was higher that the gravity they would encounter would be stronger. Instead, everyone was treated the same. Then, what did the fact that Ling Han could reach the island 3 times signify? His power and physique could completely crush anyone in the low extreme. Winning glory for the Majestic Empire was admittedly very beautiful. However, what if he lost in front of so many people? That would be extremely humiliating. King Enlon and Qi Feng's expressions involuntarily darkened. There was actually no one who dared to challenge Ling Han. This caused them to feel extremely humiliated. Wah, Blockhead is so powerful now. Even no one dares to challenge him. Li Weiwei was both astonished and excited. Even when Zhao Luan was rising rapidly, prodigies from the 2 majestic empires would occasionally rush over to challenge him. Ling Han was actually so powerful that no one dared to challenge him. This was definitely a historical event. Seeing this, Tang Feng involuntarily clenched his fists tightly. Jealousy and hatred welled up in his heart. He swore that he would challenge Ling Han when he returned and knock him off his pedestal. A bunch of trash. Qi Feng suddenly waved a hand, and said, "All of you, scram to the ship." The people of the Eternity Sky Majestic Empire all dejectedly boarded the warship. Who asked them to not even have the courage to challenge Ling Han? Meanwhile, King Enlon sighed, and also ordered his people to board the warship. The two elites both cast a deep glance at Ling Han, and only then did they order the warship to move and return to their majestic empire. Return. Ding Li and also waved a hand. When everyone boarded the warship, he immediately entered the cabin. His face instantly turned golden, and he suddenly knelt on the ground. Cold sweat flowed down his face like a small stream. How could he not pay a price for blocking two elites alone? Moreover, he had forcefully used the 9th technique of the Supreme Earth Staff technique at the end. This was far too taxing on him. He had only forcefully restrained himself in order to intimidate King Enlon and Ling Han, and didn't reveal any flaws. Otherwise, how could the two elites let him go? The warship sailed, and quickly entered the territory of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Ding Li could draw on power of the nation to heal his injuries, and his mood was greatly calmed. At this moment, even if the two elites came to their senses and turned around to chase after him, he wouldn't have any fear. The warship sailed, and quickly entered the territory of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Ding Li could draw on power of the nation to heal his injuries, and his mood was greatly calmed. At this moment, even if the two elites came to their senses and turned around to chase after him, he wouldn't be afraid. He could draw on power of the nation, and his battle prowess could increase by another star. He was completely capable of thrashing the two of them. After the warship returned to the imperial capital, everyone dispersed and returned to their respective homes. However, everyone would take another look at Ling Han before they left. This prodigy was about to rise unstoppably, but he didn't have a backer. It was relatively easy for such a prodigy to die along the way. Chapter 981. When those who entered the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm returned, a shocking piece of news spread, instantly shaking the entire imperial capital. Someone had reached the Crimson Lake Island 3 times. But for most people, they completely didn't know what this meant. Was it very awesome? Immediately, someone told him, you know, Zhao Luan. Zhao Luan only reached the island twice, and this is already the first person in 1,000 years. With this comparison, everyone had an idea. Who was Zhao Luan? That was a true genius, favored by everyone, who could advance into the heavenly body tier in the future, and such a genius could only appear once in a million years. Now, there was someone even more awesome than Zhao Luan. Who is this Ling Han? You still don't know? He came from a small world. What, someone from a small world can be so fierce? Do you think you can fool me because I'm not well educated? It's not like I haven't seen cultivators who ascended from a small world. At most, they have 15 stars of battle prowess in the Shattering Void tier, which is basically trash. You're ignorant. This person is the emperor of a small world, and came by opening the sky. Gasp. If it could be said that Ling Han representing the Chaotic Star's majestic empire and winning the first place in the competition of the 3 empires had only caused his reputation to rise, then now, his name had truly shaken the imperial capital, and was known by every single force. If he could grow, this boy could very possibly become a supreme elite of the heavenly body tier in the future. Of course, the heavenly body tier was too difficult to break through. Firstly, it took too long, and secondly, the resources needed were too much. If there was no powerful force behind him to support him, this might only be a possibility. Some Sun-Moon tier forces already had ideas, wanting to take Ling Han as their son-in-law. As long as Ling Han nodded, they would use all their resources to nurture him, and in the future, their own clans would naturally become heavenly body tier clans, becoming an influential force on Joint Peace Planet. However, there were also some forces that showed killing intent towards Ling Han, such as the Luo clan. They definitely wouldn't allow Ling Han to grow. In such surging undercurrents, Ling Han returned to the academy. The first thing he did was to report to the academy that he wanted to break through to the mountain river tier. Right now, he had only advanced by relying on the mountain river tier. He lacked his own comprehension, so his limit would stop at the peak stage of the low extreme. It was impossible for him to advance any further. He had to cultivate an immortal level cultivation technique and truly become an immortal. The academy attached great importance to this and specially sent an experienced elder to protect him. First of all, it was naturally to learn the god tier cultivation technique. Without the experience of predecessors, if one wanted to create their own cultivation technique, it would definitely not be something that could be done in just 8 or 10 years. Instead, it would be a long project that would take hundreds or even thousands of years. Cultivation techniques for the low extreme were gifted by the academy, but from the medium extreme onward, cultivation techniques would have to be exchanged for with points. However, due to the fact that Ling Han had reached the Crimson Lake Island 3 times, the higher-ups of the Northern Institution were naturally very satisfied with this achievement, and gave him an additional 1,000 points. One had to realize that an ordinary low-extreme student wouldn't be able to earn so many points in 10 years. This was extremely generous. The cultivation technique he was currently cultivating was called 7-Star Art, a very ordinary cultivation technique, because every student who reached the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier could obtain this cultivation technique from the academy. Of course, it would not be a high-class gift. After all, there was no such thing as reaping without sowing. The Tao Protector was responsible for explaining the cultivation technique, and Ling Han could ask for guidance if there was anything he did not understand. Ordinary students had 3 days time to ask for guidance, but Ling Han had 7 days. This was naturally due to the generosity of the higher-ups of the Northern Institution. However, Ling Han only used a day's time to ask for guidance, and on the 2nd day, he began to comprehend in seclusion. Firstly, his comprehension ability was indeed astonishing, and secondly, he was already standing at the low extreme. If he went back to comprehend, the difficulty would naturally be much lower. Because the difficulty was teaching you how to comprehend the regulations of heaven and earth in order to form mountains and rivers, but now that the mountains and rivers had already been formed, he had skipped the most difficult step. Ling Han took out a flame mountain river stone, and refined it as he comprehended the secrets of mountains and rivers. This way, he would be able to comprehend more directly. After refining this mountain river stone, he also advanced into the peak stage of the low extreme. He did not stop, but continued to refine mountain river stones, wanting to rush to the extreme of the low extreme in one go. His estimation was wrong. For mountain river stones were completely insufficient to raise him to the extreme of the low extreme. The higher one's cultivation level, the more resources one needed to advance one step would increase exponentially. When he refined 6 flame mountain river stones, he discovered a problem. He had not reached the extreme of the low extreme, but the large mountain in his dantian could no longer inscribe any more divine patterns, and the limit was 9 divine patterns. If I continue to refine special mountain river stones, it would only be a waste. I can only advance into the medium extreme and form a second mountain river. Ling Han took out another ordinary mountain river stone to refine. This could only increase his cultivation level, and did not have any special effects. Thus, it would not be a waste. I'm still at least 3 mountain river stones away from the extreme of the low extreme. Ling Han shook his head. He had not thought that the gap would actually be so large, because the early stage of the low extreme only required 1 mountain river stone. However, I'm a true mountain river tier cultivator, at least. He smiled. After spending 4 days, he had finally comprehended the secrets of the mountain river tier, and had become a genuine immortal. He now had room to improve further. In his dantian, the first mountain river had also been enlarged by about 100 times, and was no longer smaller than other mountain river tier cultivators. I just learned the 7-star technique, and it's about to expire. I need a new cultivation technique, or I won't be able to break through to the medium extreme. This is not something that mountain river stones can help me with. Ling Han shook his head. The quality of the cultivation technique directly determined the speed of cultivation. Thus, he had to accumulate enough points to exchange for an awesome cultivation technique. After he came out of seclusion, he reported to the academy that he would be leaving the Shattering Void Tier Division and officially entering the Low Extreme Division. Because the academy attached great importance to him, they had already arranged for him. When he came out of seclusion, a new identity document was already waiting for him. Ling Han then went to the library. Firstly, he wanted to find a cultivation technique for the medium extreme. Even if he did not have points to exchange for it now, he should at least know the price. Secondly, he also wanted to visit Old Man Su. He had obtained an awesome technique from him, and he had not properly thanked him yet. He walked leisurely, and soon arrived at the library. Everything was the same as before. Old Man Su was sitting at the door, looking drowsy. "Greetings, Senior." Ling Han walked over and bowed respectfully. Old Man Su did not open his eyes, and only casually asked, "You're back?" "I'm back," Ling Han said with a nod. "Go." Old Man Su waved his hand. Ling Han nodded again. He reached out and pressed on the stone slab at the door. He obtained a new permission, and could go up to the second floor. He went to the second floor. The bookshelves here were twice as many as those on the first floor, but they were not books in the traditional sense. Instead, they were pieces of dominoes, and some were even complete bones. There were also some godly metal covered with divine patterns, exuding an ancient aura. Chapter 982. These cabinets were all protected by restrictions, and if one stretched out one's hand, the introduction of the secret technique inside would be displayed, such as cultivation technique or martial arts technique, as well as its quality and type. More importantly, how many points were needed to exchange for these. If one had enough points, one could immediately spend points to break through the restrictions and read them. Moreover, one could comprehend here for the next 10 days. However, if one wanted to comprehend again after 10 days, one would have to spend points again, but the amount would be halved. This was also enough punishment for one, so one had to make the best use of their time. Other immortals easily had a lifespan of 100,000 or 1,000,000 years, but once one reached this cultivation level, one would know that if one wanted to climb to the peak, no amount of time would be too much, only too little. Ling Han was only introducing. He had to at least have a rough idea before deciding which cultivation technique to choose to cultivate. Many of the cultivation techniques here were very cheap, only needing a few dozen points, but there were also expensive ones, such as the Black Thunder Earth Maha technique, which actually required 5,000 points, making Ling Han speechless. Who could afford it? But thinking that ordinary students had to stay in the low extreme division for at least 5,000 years, 5,000 points really wasn't much. And the Black Thunder Earth Maha technique was definitely not the most expensive cultivation technique, there were still tens of thousands of points. In the immortal realm, cultivation techniques were divided into 10 levels, with level 1 being the lowest and level 10 the highest. For example, the 7-star technique that Ling Han had learned previously was the lowest level 1 cultivation technique. Furthermore, even if one was given the complete 7-star technique, one could only cultivate to the consummate level of the Mountain River tier at most. In this place, the highest cultivation technique was level 4. According to Shui Yanyu, the Shui clan's inherited cultivation technique, the Shattered Moon technique, was level 5. Unfortunately, no matter how daring Shui Yanyu was, she did not dare to privately pass on this cultivation technique. Otherwise, both she and Ling Han would die. For any clan or sect, cultivation techniques were the most important inheritance, and definitely wouldn't be imparted easily. Good stuff, but it's really fucking expensive. Ling Han sighed repeatedly. He had thought that he could squander the 1,000 points that he had obtained from the academy, but only after sweeping through the entire place did he realize how poor he was. I can first exchange for a low-level cultivation technique and break through to the medium extreme. Then, I can slowly accumulate my strength and exchange for a higher-level cultivation technique. Ling Han made his decision. However, he didn't immediately make the exchange. This was because he still hadn't reached the true pinnacle of the low extreme, so there was no rush. He came downstairs and was about to leave when he saw Old Man Su open his eyes and say, "Young man, accompany this old man for a walk." This old man actually opened his mouth to invite me. Ling Han couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the favor and said, "Senior, please." Old Man Su stood up and walked forward, minding his own business. Ling Han, on the other hand, followed behind him, his expression respectful. The Scarlet Heaven Academy was ridiculously large, and there were dense forests and gardens everywhere in the academy. The two of them soon arrived at the side of a lake. The lake was sparkling, and looked like thousands of golden snakes dancing wildly. "I've heard about your performance in the Sky Sea Mystery Realm." Old Man Su turned around and glanced at Ling Han. He smiled and said, "Very good." "Senior, you flatter me," Ling Han said modestly. Old Man Su chuckled, stroked his beard, and said, "Did you choose any cultivation technique just now?" "I won't hide it from Senior. I did choose a few cultivation techniques, but unfortunately, I'm embarrassingly short of money, and don't have enough to exchange at all," Ling Han said with a shake of his head. Old Man Su said, "This old man has a cultivation technique that I can teach you. However, this old man wants you to agree to a condition." "What condition?" Ling Han asked. "In the future, if you come across the highest jade essence heart, you must obtain it for this old man at all costs." Old Man Su's eyes lit up, and visions of the sun, moon, and stars surged in his eyes. His whole person also exuded a domineering aura. At this moment, he wasn't a messy old man at all. If it weren't for the fact that his hair was still white and his face was still full of wrinkles, anyone would think that he was an imposing man. Ling Han was confused, and asked, "What's the highest jade essence heart?" "If you come across it, you'll naturally know." Old Man Su only showed his might for a moment, and his aura immediately retreated like the tide. He once again became a messy old man. He waved his hand, and said, "Your present cultivation level is still too low. Even if you think about it, it's useless." "How honest. Aren't you afraid that you'll give me a blow?" "Senior, aren't you worried that I won't try my best?" Ling Han asked. After all, the other had only said that he would try his best to fight for it if he came across it, and not to try his best to search for it. There was a very big difference between these two. Old Man Su laughed loudly, and said, "Then just take it that this old man has misunderstood you." Ling Han nodded, and said, "Please teach me, Senior." This cultivation technique is called the Universal 8 Desolation Technique, but what this old man has is only an incomplete scroll. I can only cultivate it to the consummate level of the heavenly body tier. As for what comes after that, you'll have to think of your own way, Old Man Su said. This cultivation technique sounded awesome. Universal 8 Desolation Technique, and only I am supreme. May I ask, Senior, what level is this cultivation technique? Ling Han asked. Old Man Su thought for a moment, shook his head, and said, "This old man isn't sure either, but as far as this old man knows, in terms of the speed of improvement and the quality of the origin power that can be cultivated, it will definitely not lose to anyone on the Joint Peace Planet." These words were a little exaggerated. The whole Joint Peace Planet, then wouldn't that include the 3 great emperor tiers? He drew out a piece of jade, and tossed it over to Ling Han, and said, "The cultivation technique is recorded on it. Comprehend it yourself, and if there's anything you don't understand, you can come and ask this old man." "Thank you, Senior." Ling Han cautiously put away the jade. This favor was ridiculously large. If it was really as Old Man Su said, and the level of the Universal 8 Desolation Technique was not inferior to any cultivation technique that existed on the Joint Peace Planet, then as long as it was taken out to be auctioned, it would cause everyone to go crazy and fight over it. After all, A treasure like Mountain River Stone could only nurture a few geniuses, but a supreme cultivation technique could increase the level of an entire force, and this would continue for generations at that. Ling Han did not boast. He only promised in his heart that if he knew the whereabouts of the highest jade essence heart, he would definitely try his best to obtain it. He moved to a new place of residence. The students of the low extreme division naturally could not stay with the shattering void tier division. After Ling Han moved into his new home, he did not greet anyone, but immediately began to cultivate in seclusion. He now had two missions: recultivate the Universal 8 Desolation technique, and raise his body technique to the immortal level. And when he was in seclusion, some things happened. Tang Feng issued a challenge to Ling Han in a very high-profile manner. Now that the two of them were both students of the low extreme division of the Northern Institution, this was a fair battle. However, he was ranked first, and actually turned around and challenged Ling Han. This was a little unreasonable. But who asked Ling Han to be in the limelight now? Those in the low extreme all took pride in defeating him, and wanted to step on his head to advance. And if he did not defeat Ling Han, others would also suspect that Tang Feng did not live up to his reputation as the first place. Additionally, Zhao Luan had successfully broken through to the consummate level of the Mountain River tier, and it was said that he had cultivated an ancient technique that possessed incredibly frightening might. He was conferred the title of a 7th-rank military official by the Empress, and his name was branded on the totem, which allowed him to use power of the nation. All of a sudden, his reputation once again suppressed Ling Han's. Chapter 984. Ling Han faced the heavenly tribulation. Originally, it was extremely easy for his physique to pass the heavenly tribulation. With a physique as strong as level 2 godly metal, he could let the heavenly tribulation bombard him, and he wouldn't budge. But in that case, his body couldn't be tempered, and his physique could only stay where it was. Thus, in order to become stronger, he could only voluntarily shatter his body, letting his godly bones and flesh suffer the bombardment of the heavenly tribulation. Then, he would use the indestructible Heaven's Scroll to rebuild and condense his true self, allowing his physique to improve further. However, the last time he passed the heavenly tribulation was only half a year ago, and now he had to pass it a second time, making Ling Han a little nervous. That feeling was really unpleasant. If you want to become the strongest among your peers and become invincible in the future, you must endure pain that others can't. Otherwise, how can you be stronger than others? Small Tower's voice sounded in his mind. This proud pagoda always put on an appearance of preaching. Ling Han naturally knew this, but it was easy to talk. This was really unbearable pain, and it didn't even allow him to complain. Kwang the heavenly tribulation wouldn't care about his feelings. It just smashed down with terrifying attacks, trying to obliterate him. Ling Han shattered his godly bones and accepted the baptism of the heavenly tribulation. Someone was passing the heavenly tribulation. This commotion was too big, and naturally attracted the attention of the people in the academy. However, there were too many students in the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Not to say that there were people passing the heavenly tribulation every day, but there were indeed people passing the heavenly tribulation here every few days. Thus, there were people paying attention, but only a few people nearby, and it didn't cause a commotion. Moreover, the heavenly tribulation had already formed, and the blazing white lightning danced in the sky. It was difficult for ordinary people to see Ling Han's appearance, so it naturally wouldn't attract attention. Besides, Ling Han had disintegrated himself and turned into a bloody mess. Who would recognize him? A few people thought that Ling Han was struck by the heavenly tribulation, and couldn't help but shake their heads. Who was this person? He was about to pass the heavenly tribulation, but he didn't prepare well. The heavenly tribulation had just started, and he definitely couldn't pass the rest. But what shocked them was that even though that idiot was almost like a pile of rotten meat, the heavenly tribulation didn't have any intention of stopping, and was still bombarding rapidly. Obviously, that person wasn't dead yet. You're not gonna die. They were all dumbfounded. Half a day's time passed in the blink of an eye, and Ling Han had already reformed his physical body. In the instant that the heavenly tribulation dissipated, he also wrapped a cloak around his body, and disappeared. He had no choice. He was completely naked now. How could he face anyone? Hey, did you guys see that person's appearance? No, he ran too fast. How shocking. He was clearly blasted so badly by the heavenly tribulation. How did he survive? Could he have consumed the legendary spirit medicine, the 9 Deaths Reincarnation Divine Pill? A peerless divine pill that can be reborn after experiencing 9 deaths. Apart from a divine pill like this, what else could have such a heaven-defying effect? While these people were discussing, Ling Han had already returned to his new courtyard. He quickly took a bath, put on his clothes, took out some ingredients, and barbecued them. He planned to reward his stomach, as he hadn't eaten or drunk in a few months. You little brat, where have you been these past few days? You made me look for you for so long. The white cat appeared on the wall. Its nose was very sensitive, and when it smelled the fragrance of roasting meat, it came looking for him. This smell was too familiar. Ling Han couldn't help but smile, and said, "Are you a cat or a dog? Why is your nose so sensitive?" "I am the descendant of the white tiger." The white cat meowed, and pounced at Ling Han. You can speak." Ling Han was surprised, and when the white cat attacked, he immediately discovered that its cultivation level had advanced into the mountain river tier. It was said that demonic beasts could take human form when they advanced into the mountain river tier, so it wasn't strange that this cat demon could speak the human language. Instead, it would be strange if it hadn't taken human form. "I am the descendant of the white tiger, so what's strange about me being able to speak?" The white cat continued to attack. However, it was true that it had advanced into the mountain river tier, and it was true that it was the descendant of the white tiger, but Ling Han's cultivation level was higher, and his strength was similarly freakish, so why would he be afraid of it? Ling Han casually parried, only defending and not attacking. He wanted to see how strong this cat demon was. It was really quite strong. The white cat's cultivation level was only in the early stage of the low extreme, but its battle prowess had shockingly surpassed 4 stars, which was very shocking. This king's bloodline has not been completely awakened, or it would be even more powerful," it said very proudly. "Is that so?" Ling Han smiled, and suddenly threw out a furry ball of thread. Meow. The big white cat instantly shook off Ling Han, and with a swoosh, turned around and pounced. When its claws grabbed onto the ball of thread, it finally meowed in anger, "Damn brat, you dare to play tricks on me. Hee, eat meat, forget it if you don't want to eat." Ling Han sat down. Since he knew the strength of the white cat, there was no point in continuing to fight. He could suppress it with a single finger now. The white cat walked over in displeasure, but after a few pieces of meat entered its stomach, it immediately beamed with joy, and began to address Ling Han as brother. It had not been long since it had advanced into the mountain river tier, and had only just learned how to speak. Thus, it was especially talkative, and was practically a chatterbox, causing Ling Han to want to stuff its mouth, or perhaps plug his own ears. The white cat would freeload off him for food every day, and after 2 days, Li Weiwei came to visit. "Damn blockhead, where have you been in this half a year?" Li Weiwei asked angrily the moment she entered. "Oh, cultivating in seclusion," Ling Han replied casually. "Shut your fucking hell, don't you know that I've been very humiliated by you?" Li Weiwei said angrily. "What have I done to you?" Ling Han asked with a smile. Li Weiwei sat down, picked up the food, and started eating without holding back. "Tang Feng issued a challenge to you, but you were nowhere to be seen. He then spread the word that you were a coward, and did not dare to accept the challenge at all. I defended you, saying that you were not a coward, and that you would very soon come out to accept the challenge. And the result? You actually did not appear for half a year, and now everyone in the imperial capital is saying that you do not live up to your reputation, saying that you are a coward, a coward. I spoke up for you, and now I'm being laughed at. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, I've made you feel wronged, but there's nothing I can do about it. I'm in seclusion, after all, so I don't know anything. In order to avoid being disturbed by others, he always stayed in the Black Tower, and it was impossible for others to find him. Also. Li Weiwei looked excited. Zhao Luan has already broken through to the consummate level, and has won 20 consecutive battles in the Iron Blood Stadium. He is hailed as the king tier of the current younger generation, and there is no one like him. Now everyone is discussing when you will be able to catch up to him, and then have a battle with him. There are even bets for this. Ling Han's eyes involuntarily lit up, and he asked, what are the odds? Within a year, the odds are 1/10, 2 years, 1/9, then 10 years later, 1/2, 20 years later, 2/3, 100 years later, 10/12. In short, the later the time, the lower the odds, Li Weiwei said. Ling Han broke into a smile, and asked, do you want to make a fortune? Chapter 985. Hearing the word, make a fortune, Li Weiwei's beautiful eyes immediately lit up. Because Ling Han had been in seclusion previously, the business of selling ingredients could only be interrupted. With the size of her and Ji Yun, her spatial spirit tool, the ingredients they stored could only support them for a dozen or so days at most. Not long after they returned, they were all sold out. Because of this, the two girls were extremely regretful. Because Ling Han had not appeared for so long, they had also become greedy. How do we make a fortune? She hurriedly asked. There is going to be a great auction soon. If I have money, I can make father look at me differently. What auction? Ling Han asked. Oh, the imperial capital will hold an auction every once in a while, and this time just happens to be not long after the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm ends, so it naturally has to be more grand. There will be many good things, Li Weiwei said with some excitement. She paused, and her pretty face turned fierce. She said, you still haven't told me how to make a fortune. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, isn't that simple? Aren't we betting on when Zhao Luan and I will fight? Li Weiwei came to her senses at this point, and immediately clapped her hands and jumped up. She said, we will go and place our bet first, and then you will challenge Zhao Luan. No, what if Zhao Luan ignores you? Ling Han snickered, and said, then it will depend on how powerful you, the daughter of the left minister, is. Can you change the bet to when I challenge Zhao Luan? Otherwise, he would not have dragged Li Weiwei into this. Li Weiwei nodded repeatedly, looking as if she understood. But she soon revealed a worried expression, and said, but what if Zhao Luan accepts the challenge, and you are killed by him? In any case, it has nothing to do with me, so whatever. She answered herself, and was indeed not worried at all. Ling Han laughed, and said, Zhao Luan definitely cannot kill me, and if it were not for the fact that he has advanced into the consummate level, he could possibly be killed by me. This was not an exaggeration. His current physique had reached the level of level 3 godly metal, and even the consummate level would need some time to break through it. In addition, he also had the Crimson Ground locking net. With that, Zhao Luan's cultivation base would drop sharply. Back then, the Luo family had wanted to use this divine net to deal with the Lava Beast King, which meant that they were confident that they could kill the Beast King with the help of this divine net. Based on this, it could be deduced that the divine net's effect should be to weaken the Beast King by a small realm. Zhao Luan's cultivation had dropped by a small realm, and he was also trapped by the divine net, which affected his mobility. If he used the annihilating dragon star arrow, it was not impossible for him to kill Zhao Luan instantly. After all, back then, the Beast King was also at the early stage of the Great Perfection realm, and it hadn't been caught in the net yet. Wasn't it almost killed by his arrow? However, could the only son of Great General Zhao be killed? Even if it's a life and death battle, isn't he afraid that this great general will become murderous and disregard the rules to kill? The stronger one was, the less restrictive the rules would be. Rules were originally imposed by the strong on the weak. Whether one obeyed them or not depended entirely on their mood. Unless, Ling Han hid in the Black Tower after killing, but he wasn't alone, there was still the Great Ling Empire. Ling Han shook his head. If he couldn't kill Zhao Luan, he could only ruthlessly thrash him and teach him a deep lesson. And he was sure that as long as Zhao Luan wasn't killed or crippled, Great General Zhao wouldn't be so shameless as to personally make a move. More importantly, even if there was the Crimson Ground locking net, could it suppress Zhao Luan? Zhao Luan was a 4-star genius, and even if his cultivation level had been reduced by a small level, his battle prowess could still reach the early stage of the Great Perfection realm. And what about Ling Han? He was presently in the early stage of the medium extreme, and was behind by a whole small level. Furthermore, he could only display battle prowess surpassing 5 stars at most. Otherwise, who knew what the consequences would be? One had to realize that he had ascended the island 3 times, and displayed potential that surpassed 4 stars, and was close to 5 stars. This was already enough to make 2 great majestic empires want to kill him in the cradle. That battle prowess of 6 stars would definitely make one unable to eat or sleep in peace. In your dreams. Li Weiwei shook her head, and said, "You still don't know, right?" After Zhao Luan broke through, he was conferred the title of a 7th-rank military official by Her Imperial Majesty, and his name is listed on the totem. He can use power of the nation, and at least increase his battle prowess by 1 star. Ling Han frowned. In that case, it was practically impossible for him to win against Zhao Luan. Unless everything went as he expected, and he could first use the Crimson Ground locking net to trap his opponent, and then use the annihilating Dragon Star arrow to severely wound him. Could he not shoot vital points like the head or the heart? Moreover, he only had this one chance. If he missed it, he could only admit defeat. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then said, "If I battle against Zhao Luan, there will definitely be new bets. I believe that almost all the bankers would not be stupid enough to directly set out 2 choices, me or Zhao Luan, who will win. Instead, they would set out how many moves Zhao Luan can use to defeat me and make me surrender." N. Li Weiwei nodded repeatedly. Otherwise, the bankers would definitely suffer a huge loss. Ling Han broke into a grin, and said, "Then we'll use Zhao Luan to earn a large sum first, and then trample him underfoot." Li Weiwei was astonished. Why was this stupid blockhead so confident? One had to know that he had only come from a small world, and did not have any background. On what basis did he think that Zhao Luan would not be able to kill him? However, it could not be denied that this kind of confidence added an additional enchanting quality to him. "Then quickly take out the money. I'll go and place the bet right now." She was very quickly filled with the word "earn a fortune," and even her small face was glowing. After entering into the Heavenly Sea Mystery Realm, Ling Han had made a small fortune, which had all been obtained from confiscating possessions. Though he had spent a little on cultivation and breaking through to the medium extreme afterwards, added with his previous savings, he still had 4,000 true origin stones, and he handed them all to Li Weiwei. Li Weiwei left impatiently, and only returned a day later. She told him that everything was settled, and that he was only waiting for him to challenge Zhao Luan. Ling Han immediately wrote a letter of challenge, and pasted it on the main doors of the Northern Institution. It was naturally a challenge to Zhao Luan. As if the news had grown wings, it instantly spread throughout the Northern Institution, the Scarlet Heaven Academy, and the entire imperial capital. Everyone was discussing it spiritedly. They had not thought that this prodigy who had remained silent for more than half a year would finally appear again. Furthermore, he had appeared in such a high-profile manner, actually issuing a challenge to Zhao Luan. Who was Zhao Luan? The only son of the great General Zhao, and the strongest prodigy in 1,000 years. High hopes had been placed on him, and it was possible that he would reach the heavenly body tier. All of a sudden, everyone in the imperial capital was guessing whether Zhao Luan would accept the challenge or not. This junior brother is quite interesting. He has just ascended into the low extreme division, and he has already begun to challenge Zhao Luan. In a courtyard of the Western institution, there was currently a young man in blue sitting comfortably, sipping tea. Behind him stood a woman in martial arts attire. Her figure was slender, and the leather martial arts attire completely outlined her sexy figure, causing one to drool. Furthermore, her appearance did not disappoint such a fine figure, and was filled with wild allure. Her black hair was tied into a large braid that hung straight down to her buttocks, causing that perfectly round and perky buttocks to appear even more impressive. This woman saw that there was not much water left in the teacup of the young man in blue, and hurriedly poured some for him. She said, "Young master, in your opinion, will Zhao Luan accept the challenge?" Chapter 986. Of course not. The young man in blue shook his head. His cultivation level is so much higher than Ling Han's, and even if he won, he would lose face, so why bother? The tightly dressed beauty said, "Young master might not know, but Zhao Luan and Ling Han have a personal grudge." Oh. The young man in blue looked surprised. How was that possible? What strength and status did Zhao Luan have? To put it bluntly, Ling Han had no chance to offend Zhao Luan even if he wanted to. This young man in blue was called Sha Yuan, the third son of great General Sha Jing of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and also the youngest son. His talent in martial art was similarly astonishing, and he had already broken through to the consummate level of the mountain river tier 1,000 years ago, and now had already reached the peak stage. Logically speaking, he should have left the academy, but the son of great General Sha insisted on staying in the academy, so how could you chase him away? For the descendants of nobles, the Scarlet Heaven Academy was not just a place for cultivation. In truth, their own family's conditions were much better, and they came to the academy to network and accumulate their own strength. Those who could enter the academy were all geniuses. For example, Zhao Luan had 3 followers, and all of them were 2-star geniuses, and it was even said that they might be 3-star geniuses. Who wouldn't want to recruit such geniuses? The reason why the academy was divided into 4 branches and viewed each other with animosity was partly because they didn't want the descendants of certain nobles to extend their hands too far. This was an artificial restriction, and at most, they could only cause trouble in one branch. The tightly dressed beauty naturally wouldn't wait for the other to ask, and hurriedly said, "That's because of Shui Yanyu. It's said that she and Ling Han are engaged in marriage." Her name was Lu Ying, and she was chosen from among the orphans by great General Sha. Her talent in martial art was extraordinary, and she was both Sha Yuan's childhood playmate, sparring partner, and death guard. There were a total of 4 death guards like her, and they were collectively known as the 4 leopards. Sha Yuan was startled for a moment, and then suddenly laughed loudly, almost to the point of tears. Zhao Luan, aren't you very proud? How come you can't even protect your own woman?" Although the 7 great generals stood side by side, the relationship between them was definitely not very good. Furthermore, he and Zhao Luan were both top-notch young masters of the imperial capital, and they had often fought against each other. Both of them wanted to vie for the title of the imperial capital's first young master. Thus, when he learned that Zhao Luan had suffered such a great loss, Sha Yuan naturally laughed heartily. "Lu Ying, you won't betray me, right?" Sha Yuan suddenly asked. Lu Ying's heart trembled, and he hurriedly knelt down and said, "This subordinate will never betray young lord." Sha Yuan glanced at her and said, "Investigate this person for this young master. This young master is very interested in him." "Yes." Lu Ying stood up and left. "You won't, or you don't dare." Sha Yuan revealed an unfathomable smile. Tang Feng almost went mad from anger. Ling Han had ignored his challenge, causing him to look down on him as a coward. He had also spread the word that Ling Han was as cowardly as a mouse, yet Ling Han had ignored him and directly challenged Zhao Luan. Was he treating him as nothing? He wanted nothing more than to tear Ling Han into 1,000,000 pieces because this challenge from Ling Han had instantly suppressed his limelight. Zhao Luan didn't respond to Ling Han's challenge. Instead, it was his follower, Bai Yuanxi, who spoke up and expressed his disdain towards Ling Han's challenge. He said that Ling Han was only an ugly person making trouble, so how could he cooperate with Zhao Luan? If Ling Han wanted to fight, that was fine. He would accompany him. However, the prerequisite was that it had to be a battle to the death. All of a sudden, everyone's eyes landed on Ling Han again. How was he going to respond? One had to realize that although Bai Yuanxi wasn't as dazzling as Zhao Luan, he was still an elite in the high extreme of the mountain river tier. Moreover, he was a prodigy who was above 2 stars and close to 3 stars. If he fought to the death with him, there was almost a 90% chance that Ling Han would be insta-killed. Did he dare or not? Ling Han immediately gave a direct response. The entire imperial capital was in an uproar. Ling Han was currently the most popular newcomer, and Bai Yuanxi's personal strength and status as Zhao Luan's follower both made him the center of attention. The two of them were going to fight to the death, so it was destined to attract countless gazes. Unsurprisingly, there were also bets about the outcome of the battle between the two of them. How about it? What are the odds? Ling Han was clearly slightly excited. Li Weiwei chuckled and said, "If you win, the odds are 100. Ling Han's lips twitched. Although he knew that the higher the odds, the more he would earn, he had never imagined that the odds would be so ridiculous as 100. Just how bad was he? There are no odds for Bai Yuanxi to win, only odds for you to be defeated within a few moves. 1 move, 10-11. 2 moves, 10-12. 3 moves, 10-13. Li Weiwei began to introduce the odds. It was clear that the dealer was also very bad for Ling Han. Ling Han had been able to survive 100 moves, and the odds had actually reached an exaggerated level of 110. Blockhead, what are we going to bet next? Li Weiwei's eyes lit up. She had made a huge profit just now. How much did you earn? Ling Han couldn't help but ask. 4,000 for you, and 3,000 each for Sister Yun. That's a total of 100,000. Li Weiwei said excitedly. The two of them together had earned more than him. Ling Han sighed and said, "Of course we're going to bet everything on me winning." Hey, don't tell me you're jealous that Sister Yun and I earned more than you, so you want to trick us? Li Weiwei looked suspiciously at Ling Han. Am I that kind of person? Ling Han shook his head. Don't worry. If you bet on me winning, the odds are 100. I'll guarantee that you'll make a huge profit. Besides, didn't I also bet my 4,000? That's true. Li Weiwei nodded, and then asked curiously, why are you so confident? Of course it's my strength. Ling Han laughed. Zhao Luan hadn't accepted the challenge, which was within Ling Han's expectations. In any case, he had only issued the challenge to win money. He hadn't expected Bai Yuanxi to respond, allowing him to earn another sum. I'll believe you this time. However, if you cause Sister Yun and I to lose money, we won't forgive you. Li Weiwei said fiercely. Don't worry, this will be my dowry to you. I won't be able to pay you back, Ling Han said with a smile. Now, their capital of 10,000 had increased tenfold, reaching more than 100,000. If they had to win with the odds of 100, that would be an astronomical figure of 10 million. It was even more profitable than alchemy. Unfortunately, this was because the information they had was not equal. If they could understand him as well as Ling Han did, they would probably only offer tenfold odds at most. Ling Han was filled with anticipation. After receiving the wager, he could participate in the large-scale auction. He wanted to see what good things would be sold in the auction of the immortal realm. There were 3 days of buffer time before the day of the battle, but Shui Yanyu didn't appear, causing Ling Han to feel slightly disappointed. In these 3 days, he refined the last flame mountain river stone, completely stabilizing his cultivation level in the medium extreme. At the same time, the might of his divine patterns of flame had also improved. After all, he had a total of 7 divine patterns, which far surpassed the divine patterns of gravity. More refreshing reading on mobile. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.